I now call the February 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education to order. I will now entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. A motion from Carol Sawyer, second from Lenora Shipp. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Okay, Madam Clerk, the agenda is adopted by a unanimous vote of 9-0. And we're going to begin the meeting with our student advisor, Brianna Fowler. She's going to take a few minutes to formally acknowledge a very important national recognition, which many of us have been celebrating this month, and that is Black History Month. Brianna, the floor is yours, and if you'd like to go to the podium, now is the time.
Photo. Okay, yeah, no, you didn't have that one. Okay. Let me bring that back up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are celebrating Black History during February. To mark this observance, I would like to read a statement issued by President Biden at the beginning of February. It says, "This February during Black History Month, I call on the American people to honor the history and achievements of Black Americans and to reflect on the centuries of struggle that has brought us to the time of reckoning, redemption, and hope. We have never fully lived up to the founding principles of this nation that all people are created equal and have the right to be treated equally throughout their lives. We know that it is a long past time to comfort deep racial inequities and the systematic racism that continues to plague our nation. A knee to the neck of justice opened the eyes of millions of Americans and launched a summer of protest and stirred the nation's conscience. A pandemic has further ripped a path of destruction through every community in America. But we see its acute devastation among Black Americans who are dying, losing jobs, and closing businesses as disproportionate rates in the dual pandemic and economic crisis. I wanted to share a statement with everyone because I think it's eloquent and expresses some important truths. I'd like to close by saying that I feel hopeful about the future. I see evidence of significant change here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. Change that could end systematic racism in our district. It's important to give every student an equal opportunity. We don't know much talent that our students possess. There could be the next Amanda Gorman, the poet at the inauguration here in CMS. There could be a filmmaker like Ava DuVernay, a businesswoman like Rihanna Fenty, or a stockbroker like Lauren Simmons, the youngest female broker and the only African-American to hold a seat at the New York Stock Exchange. Inequalities and inequities cannot and will not be ignored. It is imperative for us to take initiative and to create opportunities for our students. If the system is unfair for anyone, it is unfit for everyone. And we will continue to challenge the system that historically and disproportionately fails Black and brown students. Black History Month can remind all of us that CMS should be a place where all kinds of talents are nurtured and encouraged. I believe that we are moving in the direction, and I'm optimistic about the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. Thank you for that reminder and for keeping us pointed in the right direction. So, colleagues, we will have two guests with us tonight for the next agenda item. We can bring in Taiwo Jayoba, who is the Assistant City Manager. If someone could Fetch him. There he is. Hi, Taiwo. The Assistant City Manager and Director of Planning, Design, and Development for the City of Charlotte. And also joining us via Zoom is Sam Spencer, who is the Chair of the City of Charlotte Planning Commission, and he's also one of the board's appointees to that commission. So Mr. Jayoba and Mr. Spencer are going to share information about the Charlotte Future 2040 Plan, which is a community-driven plan to guide the city's growth over the next 20 years. And obviously, as you're mapping out the vision for the city and the region for the next 20 years, that has a big impact on our schools, and our schools have a big impact on that. And so they had requested to bring this update to us. So thank you, Mr. Jayoba. It's really good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours.
Is it okay to remove my mask so you
Yeah,
can hear
that's
me
okay.
properly?
I think you're far
All
enough
right,
away.
so I'll yield to Commissioner Spencer to go ahead and share what he has, and then I will begin the presentation. So, Commissioner Spencer?
Thank you, Taiwo. For those of you who don't know, Taiwo truly is a person who needs no introduction, and has been really diligently leading our Planning, Design, and Development Department through major changes, including the Comprehensive Plan, the UDO, and the Charlotte Moves Task Force. So just a quick background about who the Planning Commission is and why the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education has 2 appointments. As you all know, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education appoints 2 of the 14 members of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. One is subsequently approved by the city, one is subsequently approved by the county. I happen to be, in addition to the chair, the CMS's city appointee to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. When we do our work, we do our work in 2 main groups, the Planning Committee and the Zoning Committee. What most people see is the Zoning Committee, even though our Planning Committee does a lot of work with CMS when it comes to mandatory referrals, property transfers. Whenever CMS buys or sells property, it becomes a mandatory referral and goes through our Planning Committee, where we give additional comments. But what most people think of when they think of our Planning Commission is the Zoning Committee. And our Zoning Committee works very closely with the Planning Department and the City Council to evaluate land use and make decisions when it comes to our land use and our built environment here in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. And as one of the CMS representatives on the Zoning Committee and on the Planning Commission, I strive to make sure that I take what is going on with our schools into every decision that we make. On every rezoning application that we get information from CMS and Building Services on what the impact of that rezoning is going to be. CMS tells us how many seats we're likely to need due to that rezoning, if it's a residential rezoning. Obviously, if it's a commercial, institutional, industrial rezoning, it's not expected to generate any seats. We also get an assessment from CMS of what the capital costs are going to be of any project that we approve for rezoning. And this is important information that we take into consideration every time that we do our work. Now, because I don't want to take all day, I've shared our board's yearly report and many other materials with the clerk, with the chair, and with Charlie. So, if y'all please pass those along. I think a lot of it's self-explanatory and don't want to take too much time reading off a PowerPoint. But I do want to segue to Taiwo and his presentation with this. In addition to everything I've already described, the Planning Commission is working hard on our Unified Development Ordinance, on our comprehensive plan, the Charlotte Future 2040 Plan, and the Charlotte Moves Transit Mobility Recommendations. as a board, we, as a commission, we have endorsed the general findings of the Charlotte Moves Task Force. We think that mobility is going to become an increasingly important issue for our community, and we are heavily invested in making sure that we are able to see Charlotte and Mecklenburg County and the rest of our region build a mobility network that serves everybody from students all the way up to our elders. Additionally, over the past year or two, we've made additional policy statements and commitments that really tie into making sure that we're a more livable city and a more livable county. And that has been a priority. Those are included with what I shared with my packet. And that leads us into the conversation that Taiwo is going to present on, which is about the comprehensive plan. Because Charlotte has not had a comprehensive plan in my lifetime. I am a 2003 graduate of North Mecklenburg High School, go Vikings. So you can imagine how much time that's been. And so one of the things that we're bringing together is bringing together the community and all these elements to make sure that we have a plan that truly integrates all these disparate interests and strengthens and empowers us to build the community that we want to have in the future. Taiwo has been the leader of this process, has done an amazing job bringing stakeholders together. And I do want to say, when it comes to specifically this comprehensive plan, we have seen more community outreach and involvement than almost anything I've ever seen in the Charlotte community. And I'm somebody who does organizing and politics for a living. That's my day job. And the amount of community outreach, investment, and involvement that we've seen from the planning department for this comprehensive plan truly should be a model. It is that good. And with that, I want to pass it over to Taiwo to explain and present why this plan is so important and how we're going to not only integrate planning, land use, transportation, but also the essential services that our Charlotte Mecklenburg schools provide to make sure that this plan becomes a reality. So Taiwo?
Thank you very much, Commissioner Spencer. So Chair and board members, good evening once again. And we're lucky to have Commissioner Spencer as the chair of the Planning Commission. I started in my role in 2018. He's been on the Planning Commission, but it's always been good to go back and forth between us in terms of new ideas. And sometimes I think I have some great ideas and he's got better ones. But it's a good thing. But I need to also acknowledge some of your staff who right from the beginning, 18 to 24 months ago when we started this process, one of the first persons that we met with was Carol Stamper. Sat down with her and staff and the architects and really got to understand a lot more that went into facilities planning, operations, and it was important for us to understand that. Dennis Alcaria, whether as a staff or as a contractor, we've engaged him multiple times. Dennis Rory was here. They happened to be a personal friend of mine, and we walked through a lot of these. Jennifer Holmes, Gary Adams, Jane Browning. Jennifer, Gary, and Jane, we've actually worked with recently on some charade. Really talking about if this plan, we're talking about adding 385,000 more people to our population in another 20 years. So think about that. Charlotte is about almost 900,000 people today, just the city, not the county. And if you had another almost 400,000, that definitely blows us out of the water. And then, of course, we know by 2040, 2050, the entire county will be over 2 million people, of course. And so it's very important for us that not only are we talking about land use plan, but also how all of these things connect together, because all those people that are moving here are not going to bring their schools, they are not going to bring their asphalt, they are not going to bring their housing unless it's house on wheels. And so it's very important that when they get here, that we have to have the provision in place, not just for them as parents, but also even for their children too. And so connecting with your staff from the very beginning has been very important. One of the things that I shared with Superintendent Ernest. I think that was pre-COVID when we actually had a panel. One of the things that I like to see over time is introducing a Planning 101 curriculum at some point, that the plan doesn't stop with adoption, because our children are going to eventually be sitting here in the future. They're going to be the mayor, they're going to be the county managers or the city manager. They need to know today what goes into city planning. It's not rocket science. It's just being careful and thoughtful about people, where they live, how they move, how they do business in the community, the number of jobs, housing. Because if you don't take care of those things, people vote with their feet, they leave. And so it's very important for us. And so over the last, a few years, we've been focused on a number of initiatives, but the two that I will share with you today are the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and then associated with that is the Transformation and Mobility Network that Commissioner Spencer referred to as Charlotte Moves. Now, I'll talk about that a little bit later. I always believe that the best land use plans are also the best transportation plans. If you don't have a good land use plan in place, it's almost, if you don't have a good transportation plan in place, almost of no use having the best land use plan. So we've been thinking about this, and right now we are on the pretty much on the stretch to finishing this. So this is where we are today. And in March, on March 22nd specifically, Council will be having a public hearing. We released the public draft of the plan in October 2020, October 31, and I still remember some of you came. Thank you very much. We released that on October 31, and we provided a 6-month period for people who might not have participated to be able to jump in, review the document with us. There will be a hearing on March 22nd, and then hopefully an adoption on April 26th with the Council. Now, it's very important to note that since we released that, I believe on October 31st, when we released it, we had 500 people in attendance, because we had a drive-in, movie-style engagement where people were able to come and social distance. Since we released it, we've received about 260 comments to date, and most of them, you notice, are from the public, which is very important. Again, what is the city but the people? If the people are not participating, then we're missing the mark. And so it's very important. But one of the things that's really been a highlight for us is this one. We engaged one of our local artists, Marcus Kaiser, to actually generate coloring sheets for us that we could distribute to elementary school kids and really engage them in what do you see about Charlotte in 2040? Just color this. And you notice we had over 1,100 people participate, but what you notice on the screen is that over 800 of them actually came from elementary schools. So thankful to you for the opportunity to be able to do that. These kids, again, they don't think like I do as an expert. They just think in a dreamy way, in an aspirational way, the type of city that they want. They will talk to you about, why does a sidewalk end over there? They will ask questions like, why do we have to take so many trees? I mean, so pure questions, and it was important for us to be able to engage them in envisioning the future, because some of them who may be 10 years old today will be 30 years old in 20 years' time. And so it's very important for us that we engage them very early in the process. But of course, this is what you've been waiting for. What exactly is this plan? But before I get into the Charlotte Future 2040 plan, I want you to know that all throughout the county, every jurisdiction has one plan or the other. Whether it's a comprehensive plan like I'm sharing with you tonight, or a mobility plan, or in the case of Mint Hill, their Unified Development Ordinance. So we're not alone, and the county has a playbook that's talking about parks and recreation. So it's important to note this, because what it means is this: every single municipality in our county understands that we're growing and developing so fast, and there's got to be that nexus between growth and transportation and affordable housing and food service grocery stores, or even full service banking. We've been to some community where they don't even have full service banks. All they have is an ATM. And so it's very important, because all of these communities recognize the importance of land use and mobility plan together. So Charlotte is not alone in doing that. But for us, while I keep using the phrase land use plan, it is a land use plan, but it connects to everything, such as the location of a school facility, or the location of a fire facility, or location of a library, or maybe in our case sometimes is, where do you have affordable housing? Do you concentrate them in one geography, or you distribute them throughout the city, which I believe should be done, rather than just be in one part of the city. We should never, as a city, concentrate poverty. It's very important. We should never, as a city, see a particular geography as that's the place where affordable housing goes. It should be available to everyone the same way we treat parks. Parks should not just be in one place and you have to drive there. People should be able to access it by walking, by scootering, or by riding a bicycle to get there. So when we started engaging the community, it was important for us to start with equity. Equity. How do we make sure that as a city, no one is left behind? So those 4 guiding principles, we started by saying we want to talk about equity. But by the time we went through the first 3 community process, they showed us the 4 guiding principles that should really be very important to this plan. In other words, the Charlotte of the future must not only be equitable, must be authentic, must be integrated, and must be resilient. And then we had some equitable growth metrics. How do we know when we get there? Number 1, are we taking care of people who are vulnerable to displacement? What policies do we have to protect people from being displaced? Sometimes gentrification may not be avoidable, but displacements can be minimized and can be avoided in many instances. How do we make sure that we have access to essential amenities, goods, and services for people, access to housing opportunity, and all of those metrics? And then we came up with these 10 plan goals. Those 10 plan goals were developed together with the community. We never went into the comprehensive plan thinking we were going to come up with this. For them, it was important that upward mobility was top of the mind. It was important that affordable housing was top of the mind. It was important that transportation was top of the mind. So I'm going to just share 3 of those things with you tonight, and then I'll stop for us to ask questions. One of the first things that they shared with us is at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is to create complete communities, regardless of where you go, breathe in clean air, have access to full-service grocery stores, jobs, healthcare, and all of that. But what it means for CMS in my mind is this. All your faculty members, staff members, students, people should have access to sidewalks that can really get them to neighborhood schools. People don't have to drive to get to school. And so when we talk about having a goal that will be 10-minute neighborhood, it's really taking a few steps together. One of the things that we learned from your staff is how important that is, especially to neighborhood schools where you have riders and walkers. It's very important that we also, you will see there that we actually indicate that accessibility to neighborhood schools is so important within 10 minutes. People should not have to drive from one part of town simply because they feel that the quality of schools in their neighborhood is not good enough and they have to move somewhere else. People should be able to have access to, amenities within a 10-minute or about less than 1,500 steps of where they are without having to drive. Maybe they will use a scooter, maybe they will ride a bicycle. And even if they drive, do it in a smart way, creating safe routes to schools, to libraries, to opportunities for people to have, a livable experience. Then I also believe that this goal is very important in terms of neighborhood diversity and inclusion. This is probably one of the most talked about as out of this plan, that we're trying to eliminate single-family housing. That's not the goal. The goal is to expand areas where we have single-family residential housing today to allow other forms of housing product. There are people who may not be able to afford 3,000 square foot home, but they may be able to afford 750 square foot home. But not only that, it allows people to be able to age and stay in place. There are people who want to downsize, but the fact that you're downsizing doesn't mean you have to move out and lose your relationships. Doesn't mean you have to leave your doctor. Doesn't mean you have to leave your dentist. Doesn't mean you have to leave the childcare that your grandkids are going to. So it's really about having diversity. There are people who may not be able to afford those bigger homes, but they might be able to afford duplexes or triplexes or maybe even accessory dwelling units built behind like what you see as D, built behind a main house. And so it's possible for us to have diversity without necessarily losing property home values. It's possible for us to have diversity without necessarily, keeping it in one part of town and then being excluded from other places. So the part of the plan here is to be able to make sure that there are places where you have multiple units, but there are also places where you may just have townhomes, maybe attached townhomes, or detached even, that will be in communities where people can actually live together. Do you know that Charlotte is #1 in the country for baby boomers? Call them baby chasers, because they came here because of the millennials having kids, and so they moved with their kids to look after the grandkids, and a lot of them don't want to rent bigger houses. They want to live in a smaller, affordable environment. And so this plan makes provision for that. And when you think about your staff, when you think about, some of your faculty, sometimes this is really what may be affordable for them. And the last goal that I will talk about is safe and equitable mobility. In other words, that our city, and indeed the entire region, will provide safe and equitable mobility options for people. So whether people choose to drive, they should do it smartly. We should improve the roadways. There are about 10,000 people in this city today who are visually impaired. While some of us may find it easy to cross a street, to take the bus, they find it very difficult to do that. How can we make sure that we integrate technology into a traffic signaling system that allows people to cross the street safely, so that even when you're driving, you're able to also observe that people are driving and therefore reduce fatality. 100% of fatalities and accidents that happen on our roads today happen on 10% of Charlotte's roads. 100% happens on 10% of Charlotte's Road. And if we can do something about that, I think we reduce high injury network substantially. But not only driving, though, but opportunity for people to be able to take the bus, make it more frequent, make it accessible, opportunity for people to use the greenways, to use to be able to use complete sidewalks and ride their bicycles in protected lanes. So when the Mayor Lyles and Council put together this task force chaired by Mayor Gant back in February, and they started to meet in May. By the time they finished meeting in December and they submitted a recommendation to Council, this is what they came up with. They said, we would like to have a multi-mobility investment and not just in Charlotte, but countywide. And let's see how we can implement all of these things, whether it will be Silver Line from Matthews going all the way to the airport, or is the Red Line going all the way to North Towns, or is the Blue Line going all the way to Pineville and Ballantyne, or is the Gold Line that will extend all the way to Rosa Parks beyond JCSU and also to Eastland Mall, or improve the top 22 bus routes to about 10 or 15 minutes, so that people don't have to spend 40, 30 minutes waiting for the next bus to come. And you don't always have to take the bus uptown to get to where you need to get to. So it's improvements in these types of things that really motivated this task force to recommend that let's not only invest in public transit, but also let's invest in other things like roads, sidewalks, bikeways, and greenways. So I shared this with our City Council last time, that if the General Assembly obviously was able to authorize us to increase sales tax by 1 cent, let's see how we can divide it up between rail and bus and then the other municipalities, because Charlotte is not the only city that's struggling with transportation. You go to Huntersville, sometimes it's very hard. Pineville, Cornelius, Davidson, Mint Hill, in Matthews. And so it's very important that while we invest in public transit that will connect all these places, let's have a conversation about investing in street network, greenways, bikeways, pedestrian ways, for all of these municipalities as well over the next 20 years. But what does that really mean for CMS? I put this together because I think that this will really drive the point home for you. So the map that you see on your right, to my left, is the map of the mobility network. If we were to have a complete mobility network, and this is for the greenways, everything you see in yellow is elementary or middle school. Everything you see in red star is high school. In this case, 36% of your schools are going to be within 1 mile of a greenway investment throughout the county. There are some people, this is what they define as quality of life. They don't use the transit, but if you have trails, greenways next to them, that's a good thing. It will be a way for them to be able to get to high school or to be able to get to school and walk with their kids if they can. And so when you think about it this way, this is just the greenway. The one that has the most number of schools is, of course, the Cross Charlotte Trail, has about 36 within half a mile. And so it's very important. And then when we get to what we call a mobility hub, mobility hubs, where all of the different modes come together, you've got everything that you see on the map in blue are just within the city. We did not do mobility hubs necessarily for for the other municipalities. But you can see the high concentration of a lot of the schools around where we propose to have mobility hubs in the future. The one that has the highest is this. Almost 50% of your schools are located within half a mile of a bikeway. I don't know how many students ride a bike to school. I was chatting with Acacia within the last few days, trying to determine and come up with some data. And it's interesting what we found out. About 47% of your schools are within half a mile of a bikeway. So imagine a world where we invest in a robust, safe bikeway routes. Then it will motivate students to be able to get to school and parents to be able to actually save on transportation. Charlotte has one of the highest transportation expenses in the country. And so when we tell people that, they often don't know until we show them the data. The Silver Line Trail, of course, has the most number of schools within half mile. And then if we're talking about improvement in congestion management, traffic congestion, you've got almost 30% of CMS schools that are within half a mile of a congestion management investment area. In other words, which traffic areas can we improve upon so that people can, your school buses, for example, can get to school on time. The parents can drive their kids to school on time. You've got almost 30% of CMS schools that are within these areas where if we have the opportunity to invest in a very robust network, we'll be able to capture those 30%. Now, what you see highlighted in blue on that map are the three areas where we have the worst traffic situations in Charlotte. University City area, South Charlotte, and the Steel Creek area. And I can imagine the impact on school buses. I can imagine the impact on parents who are driving their kids to school. And so an investment will be able to help us improve a lot of this so that we can actually have through good movement for buses and for drivers if they choose to drive. And then for our bus priority lane, we've got almost 40% of CMS schools within half a mile of a bus priority corridor. Think of your faculty, think of your staff. Sometimes some of them don't have a reliable vehicle to get them to school and to work there. So it's very important that we improve our bus priority corridors as well. And finally, of course, our rail. You have almost 30% of CMS schools that are within half a mile of a rapid transit. When you think about it, obviously the Gold Line streetcar, because it's within town, built-up areas, has the most concentration. But every single one of them, look at the Red Line going to the north. There are elementary schools and middle school and high school close enough to it that if people choose to go to work at a CMS school using rail transit, they have the opportunity to be able to do so. So again, we want you to stay engaged. As planners, we don't often see everything. It's very important for us to be able to hear back from you. So this, information is very important in terms of getting across to us. Yesterday, I think it was, let's see if I can, yesterday, 2 days ago, actually, we launched the virtual open house, which is available in 100 or more languages, and it's available also 24/7. If you go on there, it will show you the history of the project and be able to connect the dots of the comprehensive plan to the transportation piece and allow you to provide comments as well. And that will be open until mid-April. And then we've also been recruiting a lot of our residents to be ambassadors because there's a lot of questions that people have. And some places we may not be able to go. We can follow you to church. We can follow you to your homeowners association meeting. But if you are informed that you're educated about some of these things, you equip yourself to be able to spread the word. But not only that, if it become too technical, then you can ask us to step in to do that. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I know there's a lot that I've just shared with you, but I'll be very happy to answer questions that I know I got some questions earlier on, but if I did not address them, I'll be glad to speak to them. Thank you.
So, Mr. Jayoba, thank you for your work, and also Commissioner Spencer, thanks to both of you for recognizing how interconnected all of the schools are with the city, the work of the city, the work of the county, the work of the towns. And I know we all get so busy in our own circles that it's easy to lose track of what one another what we're working on. So thank you for bringing this to us and getting us up to speed, because there is a big impact on our schools, and our schools have a big impact on what you're working on with this plan. So colleagues, do you have any questions in terms of the intersection between the plan and our schools? Ms. Sawyer?
Yes, thank you, Carol Sawyer. I am wondering how we can, first of all, I'm very glad that you're looking at mixed housing types, because we can't fully integrate our schools and provide opportunities across our school district in our current isolation with housing patterns. But as we grow faster and fill in space, we have fewer and fewer places to put schools. How does this plan help us address that issue of lack of land? If a developer buys a big plot of land and develops, we don't have the power to enforce land devoted to schools, or to have an impact fee that would support schools. How can we do that?
I know there's a lot that goes into schools planning. You're not only thinking about the academic buildings, you're also thinking about sports facilities for kids. And one of the conversations we've been having with Dennis Lacaria, Mr. Lacaria, is we might need to rethink our models for how we build schools. Now we see in a lot of communities, and you've seen that I have been there, where they're beginning to build up rather than spread out, especially in built-out areas. Where you have opportunities to spread out, yes, we should, especially for our high schools, because they do need the spaces to be able to do that. But there are schools that can be co-located, in neighborhoods. And I think that you're doing that right now. I know that in San Francisco, in New York, they have schools where you have co-location between middle and elementary. But again, you don't want to build too high. And so it becomes a challenge. And so this plan actually allows CMS to continue to do what it's doing in terms of its current process. So let's assume that you find a facility in a particular community and you come to us. We want to work with you and say to you that, look, this may be the type of transportation, traffic trips that will be generated as a result of you locating this school here. How can we work with you and the community to make sure that we provide other opportunities for people to be able to get in and out of this school facility without having to create a bottleneck? We see a few examples out there. We're also going to be working with developers when they are developing this land, this large development, to see what can we do between them and CMS and the city to provide opportunities for land to be able to build. Because developers also want schools to be close enough, frankly speaking, because it benefits them rather than schools to be out in the place. So yeah, a couple things, just rethink model of how we design and build schools today, but also thinking about how the plan is thinking, where if you want to continue to do business the way you're doing it today, how can we make sure that we have the transit infrastructure that can support you so that traffic doesn't become a bottleneck, especially for the neighbors that are living there. And then 3, working with developers when these things are happening to see what opportunities are available for us to be able to either carve out or dedicate a piece of property, just like we do for transit today. I mean, there are developers that provide right-of-way for transit corridors today. How can the same thing be done when it comes to fire facilities, libraries, schools? But those are things that the policy, that the plan has in place, but they still have to do with having conversations with individual developers as how you make that happen. Yeah. But we definitely need to be working together. We have a group right now that's called Joint Use Task Force, which not only has the city, it has the county, it has CMS staff, it has folks from North Carolina Department of Transportation. It's really an opportunity for us to talk a lot about, Commissioner Spencer talked earlier on about mandatory referrals. Sometimes that group is where a lot of these conversations will be taking place once the comprehensive plan is done. And they've seen this comprehensive plan, they reviewed it, and we think that we're in a good place once we start to put this in the ground.
Thank you.
And just to add to what Taiwo said, I think a big part of it is engagement at the beginning of the process. Last year, And at the end of 2019, we had a lot of engagement from at least one or two members of the school board on rezoning petition 2019-115, which was the massive 400 to 500 acre Ballantyne rezoning. And one of the reasons that CMS got involved is because, you know, our report from CMS told us that there was an expected $30 million in capital needs that would be created by the rezoning. But at the same time, when CMS Planning Services sent us over the report, they also noted that in the South Planning Group, approved rezonings from March 2017 to 2019, the time of that petition, would create over 500 students. And so I think also getting involved in letting us know, you know, throughout the rezoning process, when we're going through multiple rezonings, please feel free to reach out, know why we're adding the students, and also look at, you know, I would love to work with the board to help us figure out, you know, what is a point at which we need to give more due diligence, because we know if it's a big rezoning like Ballantyne, we should give some strict scrutiny to how that's going to impact adequate public facilities. If it's a small 1 acre rezoning, we're probably not going to consider, you know, the impact of 1 or 2 new students. But, you know, where's the line? Because not every rezoning's 1 acre, not every rezoning's 400 acres. And I think we can put a lot more work into figuring out what's the point at which we need to be talking more proactively about how our rezoning is going to affect our schools and the number of seats it's going to generate.
Yeah, it's my impression that we have never stopped a zoning petition because there isn't room in the schools, even though there isn't room in schools. But the other issue that I think is a critical equity issue for us is transportation for our students, especially high school students, from their high school to a CPCC or to a workplace. And so I'm excited to see how this plan can address some of those issues. So that's something that I would love to hear more about, is how we can meet those needs.
Thank you. I know you sent me some questions, and hopefully I can get in touch with you specifically as well with some of those, because one of the policies we have in the plan, let me see if I can actually pull that out, is to make sure that we invest in youth training and paid programs that expose youth to education and career pathways, but understanding that transportation is key to achieving that. And we had a conversation too, Chair Dashu, about this. So that's very important. I believe that there are things that we haven't done in the past as a city, and we've grown so much and we continue to grow, that we need to start thinking about doing them. If we're living in a state where we're not able to mandate developers to provide us affordable housing units, because we do not have the ability to do that in North Carolina. But what we do have the ability to do is to incentivize developers to do that. And there are developers who want to do the right things. And so if we incentivize them either by expediting their process to build housing, then I believe that they will do it. Perhaps we can use the same model for schools as well. That, you know, when you're building and you're introducing so many number of kids and, you know, in this area, we need to start talking about the impact on schools' facilities and schools' growth. We cannot in North Carolina charge developers impact fees today, even though we've included that in this comprehensive plan. Is a 20-year plan. Anything can happen in 5 years' time. We made the provision to be in there. But even though we may not be able to, developers do contribute to a number of things today they want to work with us, and we want to work with them to make sure that nothing broadens communities, but at the same time that we continue to accommodate our growth. It's a tough balance, but I believe that there are developers out there who want to do the right thing, and we'll continue to work with them.
I'm going to call board members in the order in which I saw their hands, and so Ms. Shipp, and then our student advisor, Ms. Fowler, and then Mr. Strain.
Yes, I want to thank you for this 2040 plan. It definitely is what we need. I too want to talk a minute about transportation and question. I know you had mentioned, especially some of the real congested areas, the Steel Creek area, I think you mentioned, is very much a major area. Our communities have met with the DOT about this, and I heard you mention one of the things that's really going to be important, and I know you all will be looking at, is how congested, for example, Steel Creek is in that area, and there's no mass transit. So I hope that's something you're really looking at. There's almost no buses that run to support, and when we talk about children or students being able to go from their schools somewhere, even in the downtown area, that's a major need. And also, when you were talking about sidewalks, some of our students could walk like Steel Creek up to Southwest Middle School, but there's no sidewalks. So when you were talking about sidewalks and walking to school, there's so many opportunities there. So I thank you for looking at this and hope you'll continue to look closely at, what we can do, because it really does impact our schools as much as it does our cities and our community. And of course, we're somewhat in the county too. So this is a big one, the city, the county,
Yes.
and also what are we doing with the schools? So
Thank
those are
you.
some of the things I've had questions about. And I listened to some of this. I came to some of the meetings.
Yes.
So thank you
Thank
for the
you very
work.
much. Yeah. So let me quickly speak to that, even though it's not necessarily a question. There are some of those things that don't have to wait for the comprehensive plan to be ready for us to start solving them. So we do have a congestion mitigation fund that was part of the transportation bond from last year that will actually be deployed towards Steel Creek. Because even if you have transit, you get stuck in traffic. I know Steel Creek very well. So I think that over time, what this plan does is to strengthen the city's ability to continue to put its investment where there are bottlenecks. So this plan will definitely build on whatever we have today. But it's almost like growth is definitely has outpaced infrastructure. I admit that. But I think over time, incrementally, we can make a change. But if we were to have an opportunity to have this transformational mobility network, more funds will be available for us to do things faster and more.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Fowler, and then Mr. Strain, and then Ms. Byers-Bailey, and then Ms. Marshall. And can you turn your mic on? There you go.
Okay, thank you. So this is Brianna Fowler speaking, and I heard that you talked a lot about the prevention of the blatant inequities that we see in our county today. So my question for you is, how will you perform or combat the inequities that we already have in our county? And that could be through the housing, like you said, in our neighborhoods. And how will we see this plan in our schools?
It's very important. I cannot promise you that this plan will be the solution to inequities. We've been dealing with it for many years. And this is not just about racial inequity, but also even inequity when it comes to physical ability versus physical disability. You look at some of our sidewalks, almost like we only plan them for people who are physically able. And if you're in a wheelchair, you're stuck. How can we make sure that we shift that conversation around building a whole city for everyone, not just people who are physically able? And the same thing applies to neighborhoods around schools. How do we make sure that you have sidewalks on both sides, not just on one side? That's important. How do we configure the traffic lights in such a way that people cannot just drive through and, there will have to be some signaling mechanism that we can do that people need to know that they need to obey those intersections when they get there so they don't injure our students or faculty or school staff. Those are very important. I believe that what this plan sets in place by saying that we're trying to have housing diversity is another goal that says housing access for all. There's another goal there that talks about healthy and active lifestyle. In that goal is, let's provide healthy food opportunities for everyone in our city. We have heard about food deserts. Sometimes we can't control it. the market forces do. But are there things that we can do and invest there that will attract the right businesses to want to have a full-service grocery store in a part of town? One of those things that the city did with the last budget was to invest $24 million of its funds in 6 corridors of opportunities. Those 6 corridors were deliberately targeted to be vulnerable corridors: Beresford Road, West Boulevard, Central Half Mile, North Tryon, and West Sugar Creek, West Sugar Creek and 85. I'm forgetting the sixth one. But that was the first time we would do anything like that. And the idea was, if this is where the comprehensive plan is taking us in terms of lifting up vulnerable communities, let's also set aside funds that will be invested in infrastructures. You go on Beresford Road, and the sidewalk may not be able to take one person walking next to another without a vehicle hitting them. And if you want to expand that, you may end up taking someone's front yard. And so how do you invest in that environment that will really be safe for both students and staff to be able to go to and fro from school? So those are the types of things, and I believe we're doing that again this year, maybe adding more communities or strengthening the communities where we've invested some of those funds. Again, what this plan does is to be able to drive capital investments into communities that are vulnerable and see how we can uplift them.
Thank you, and I really love the idea that increasing transportation, of course, will increase communication, therefore increasing the education quality for our students and our staff. And I saw that you said that you want to increase the quality of education, therefore increasing the amount of schools and the infrastructures that we have, so everyone will have access to the transportation that you were talking about and the greenways. For our teachers, how do you think that may affect the teaching style? Like you said, we could incorporate the greenway into the curriculum, have our students leave out. So are those type of ideas that you have when you are talking about our 2040 future plan?
So yes, not just for schools, frankly, but even for libraries, for any area where people gather together. Schools are one of those places. Eventually, we will go past this COVID-19, and I think we will see a lot of people come out once we are out of this space. But the thing that hasn't changed since we started staying at home is the number of roads we build hasn't increased in number. I mean, it's still going to be, but people have moved into Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte is number 6 in the country in terms of receiving people during coronavirus, moving from New York and Boston and all these other places. And we're going to continue to have that, but the opportunity is if we were to invest in a transportation system that offers options and not just driving. Right now we have one blue line, then we have a streetcar, the gold line. How about we have a silver line that runs on Monroe off of 74 and that connects Matthews to Uptown? You give people options. When you give people options, then they have a freedom to choose whether to drive or not to drive. And I think that applies even beyond students, more to faculty and staff. Because even if the train station is a mile away, they may be able to drive to a park and ride lot, park their vehicle there, and take the train to work. I do that at least twice a week, and I live in South Charlotte. I drive my vehicle to, South Boulevard, I-485 station, and take the train in. At least try to do that twice a week. And it's something that a lot of people would like to take advantage of. But right now, we're limited. So hopefully over time, as we build that, we also continue to match that growth with transportation options.
And to the student advisor, Ms. Fowler, the one thing I just wanted to add to what Taiwo said, because he really hit everything, but this is a process where we are still receiving input and public comment. Mm-hmm. And I would love for us to see more public comment from people who are under the age of 20, because that's one of the groups that we have not been able to get as much public comment from. We know that this generation of CMS students has been amazing when it comes to things like advocating for environmental justice, for equity. Y'all have really stepped up and become leaders in the community. And another way that we can really empower students to do that and make sure that your voice is heard in this plan is to make sure you read the plan and get comments in. So if this plan isn't doing enough in those areas, if it's not doing enough for social justice, if it's not doing enough to make a more equitable community, we welcome the comments from any CMS student to visit the website, read the plan, and let us know something that's missing.
Thank you. And I feel like many students will be more than happy to give their comments. And just something that I was thinking of while we were sitting here is just the security. I also ride the Blue Line for when I'm coming downtown or things like that. But transportation in Charlotte, for example, is not normalized to take the public transportation. So when you had on the slide that there will be transportation that will pass Irwin Academic Center, I went there as an elementary school student, and just the security aspect of that. How will we teach our elementary school students what to look out for when they're on the train, even though they may be with their family? Are we going to have curriculums infiltrated into our schools? And how will we teach our students how to navigate through these new transportations? Because it is going to be a learning curve for our students if it's going to be in their lives more.
And that does sound like a partnership opportunity for the schools and the city to work on as more people are using transit.
We have a program in planning department, we call it Youths in Planning. Pre-COVID, we will engage about 80 to 100 students, bring them into the planning department and kind of educate them on what we do, take them to CATS, the Charlotte Area Transit System, to kind of show them. I like to have a conversation with superintendent how we can do that more post-COVID. Yeah, that's a major partnership opportunity.
We would welcome that conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Strain, and then, I almost called you Mr. Spencer. Mr. Strain, and then Ms. Byers-Daly, and then Ms. Marshall.
That's right. First of all, Mr. Spencer, Sam, thanks a lot. It's great to hear from you, and thanks so much for your thoughtful leadership of the commission. I will thank you for the work that you've done, the tremendous body of work here, your leadership since joining us here in Charlotte, and driving this very important body of work. I'm very keen on strategic plans, and so from that perspective, actually having a thoughtful strategic plan for how we go about developing not only the city, but the region is critical to our success. And having lived in places like Washington, D.C. and London, and spent time in so many large cities, we've got tremendous opportunity here as long as we do so thoughtfully, and I appreciate your leadership on that. Speaking of that, one of the things, the challenges we have with regards to aligning our plans with that of the region, in particular the county and all of our municipalities, is thinking about where growth is going to occur. And so our last bond was the most significant investment in capital infrastructure for public schools that this county has ever made and committed to. And yet we continue to talk about the further needs and thinking about how we go about planning so that, for example, we've talked about areas like Ballantyne and Steel Creek. How would we have anticipated, certainly should have, how would we have anticipated the growth in Steel Creek? Because, we're in a position where a lot of times we're kind of reacting to the growth. And so same thing with Ballantyne and Ballantyne Reimagined. Ballantyne Reimagined was being discussed 2 years ago in some small rooms. And so over, the following year, it really got some legs. Northwood developed it further, working with yourselves. And so those sorts of projects we need to anticipate. But that being said, one of the challenges we have is that anticipation. So I'm far from the longest serving board member, but some of us on this board can remember times where we did start to react and then changes were made, mainly economic in nature, in terms of We had an economic downturn. We had started building in anticipation. Some of those actually approved developments haven't occurred. And so thus the challenge, right? How do you go about aligning with it's just 20 years, 19 years now we're talking about, which is not much when you think about the fact that the next bond we do will be still a couple of years out. And that's a 7-year cycle. So, we're talking about bringing these things online in 10 years' time. So I guess our challenge, and I'd really appreciate your thoughts on this, is how can we sort of anticipate where the next Steel Creek boom, the next Valentine boom? I mean, I have ideas as to where that is, but if we anticipate like that, then maybe we can start to get some strategic bets on where we need to invest in our capital infrastructure.
Really, that's pretty much the summary of the comprehensive plan. So where are we going to grow next, and where do people go? And so a few weeks ago, we were working on this. We did an experiment in the department and started asking ourselves, let's look at where growth is going to happen over the next through 2050. Through 2050, we started looking at it. And the more we looked at it, we realized that Mint Hill is going to be the fastest growing municipality in this county in another 10, 15 years.
Because they have room.
And that's
Exactly.
going to grow through 2050. It's going to be the fastest growing area. And so we sat back and we said, okay, what do we do now? Because Mint Hill is out of our area as a city, but it's within the county. And as we talk about this transformation and mobility network, and we're going to invest in it, the nearest light rail station perhaps to Mint Hill will be in Matthews. Maybe Mint Hill doesn't have the ridership for one, but can we provide shuttle services that will serve that? And what do they look like? Their libraries. We started to itemize some of these things. So you're right. Sometimes this conversation needs to be had in the open, but oftentimes we sit down and we're projecting these numbers ourselves. I mean, if you ask me, it's so easy. It's Mint Hill, because that's where the growth is going to occur, because we just did this in the office a few weeks ago. A lot of infill development, and you see that on Providence Road. As you're driving down, people are pulling down and building. We're going to continue to see a lot more of that, and people often think that it's that's creating the traffic. And I said, no, even if you stop building on Providence, people are coming from Union County and they're driving through Providence. They will continue to drive through. But how can we make sure that even if people are doing that, we can provide some things that can really move traffic, maybe buses quicker, through traffic signals that can move traffic at least a little bit faster. But we need to do a better job of anticipating, and when we do, share that with you. And that's pretty much the bottom line, to say that this is what we see. What's the plan? How can we help? And that is, I can share those projections with you. I can send that to you, and you'll see that. I think it's very eye-opening for us to see that it's not just because of COVID. Because people say because of COVID, people are going to move into the suburbs. That's true. But the cities are going to grow younger because young people are moving to the city. But it's just because that's where land is available.
Yeah, and certainly you see that when you sit down, as I do with the mayor of Mint Hill, and, knocks on his, door every week, talking about how land can be used out there. And so that's my expectation. That I guess my question is, how do we best collaborate to make sure that we look at this as a county and a region, right, expansive beyond just the city, and as we as governmental entities, as you're working for one, and we are on a board of directors for one, we've got to place those bets. And how do we place those bets most effectively together, right? Because part of it is the infrastructure required to support the growth that's anticipated, whether that's, storm drains and, putting in all of the city infrastructure, or for academics and understanding, the educational requirements and how to go about doing that. so that, you know, there's a couple of tiers of bets I could imagine, some that are pretty safe bets. I mean, it's pretty much a no-brainer that regardless of what happens, we're going to see this level of growth. And then something that might be a little more risky bet, but it's still fairly likely to occur. And the question is how do we most effectively work collaboratively? This is certainly a piece of it, but at a staff level to make sure that the next time we go and do a capital needs assessment, it's taking into account sort of those growth projections and tiered growth projections, right? The most likely, the more likely, you know, somewhat likely sort of things that you can see, and the work across the county and the region, you understand what those are. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Definitely will be putting a lot of thought into that.
Bless you. Ms. Byers-Bailey, then Ms. Marshall, and then Ms. De La Hora.
Thank you. On the same train of thought that you were discussing with Mr. Strain, what about the River District? There was a time when that was supposed to be the next hot place, and then I haven't heard anything about them. Is that going to be something that you are looking to in the future? And if so, what are you planning to do to enhance that area, if anything?
Which area? I didn't hear.
The River District.
The what?
The
River District.
Oh, yeah. So sorry about that. Well, that's the same. So one of the challenges that we've had, frankly speaking, which was probably one of the motivation behind this comprehensive plan, was that we have 96 different plans in this city, 96. About 50-some area plans, and we have some district plans, but the newest of them is like South End Vision Plan that was done 2018, and then another one, Prosperity Oaks, that was done in 2015. Everything else is outdated, 1992, 1991. So the same approach we're taking to the district is how can we make sure that we're going to retire some of those plans, have new ideas in this comprehensive plan, take some of the good ideas in those existing district plans or area plans and elevate them into this comprehensive plan and deal with the entire city the same way. But understanding that people who live there have different aspirations, different goals, and different values. So once the plan is adopted in April, we go to every area, district by district, geography by geography, and we do what we call place types mapping. That will involve community participation in the process. We want to reduce the number of area plans from 96 to something that's manageable, but that still reflects districts and areas' aspirations and their values and their goals. But we want them to tell us. We don't want to have to say, this is our plan for you. But we will set some framework in place and then start. So from May through October, that's what we're going to be doing. Now, it's likely that most of those will be done virtually prior to July, and then maybe after that, we see how we can engage folks face-to-face. But what I don't want us to do with the comprehensive plan, especially once we start mapping communities and districts, is to be telling people what we like to see for their communities, but for them to be able to tell us, even though we set some framework, if that helps.
Well, it was an area that was being developed by some corporate entities, and I'm not,
do we know if it's residential or?
What?
Do we know if it's residential or commercial? What's been developed?
It was a lot. It was residential, it was commercial, but it was on the other side of the airport.
Yeah. You talk, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
River District, and then there is also the off of Holly. Is it the industrial development? Because there's another one that just came up that generated a lot of controversy. Is that the one?
She's thinking about, I think, Crescent's development.
She's thinking about River District, not that.
Yeah.
So,
I might be able to speak to that.
okay, all right.
Just to address it on the school side, this was one of the first projects that I worked on the zoning committee. I voted in favor of approving it. But just a little background. So with the River District, there is a 10-year commitment that there's a reservation for 10 years for school needs of 2 15 to 25 acre parcels. So the school system has the right to use those within the first 10 years of the plan. And that was a big part of the commitment that we got because at the end of the day, if I remember correctly, it was anticipated to create almost 3,000 students and over $60 million in capital needs.
Yeah.
So the CMS still would have that commitment. Since that petition passed in 2016, there's still another 5 years on the 10-year commitment for those 2 parcels for schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Spencer.
My other question was a different side of Charlotte, and
Okay.
that is the Beatties Ford Road corridor. I was trying to determine from one of the planning meetings where the bike lane might be, and I was asking about protected bike lanes, and I
Yes.
was told that because the streetcar is coming down Beatties Ford Road, there was no room for bike lanes, and so they were going to run a bike lane on a parallel street, probably Mulberry to Jennings. And to me, that is a street that would be, if for a biker, would be strenuous to go down one hill and up another hill that is substantial.
Yeah,
And I was wondering if there might not be some other less incline possibilities for bikers.
so on Beatties Ford, I cannot say, but on Oakland, I do know we do have an existing bike lane
Right.
there right now, but it
Right.
only goes for like 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 miles or so, not deep enough. That will happen for those streets outside of Beatties Ford that are connecting to Beatties Ford. One of the things, so this out of that 24-point-some million dollars that I mentioned for corridors of opportunities, we actually allocated 11 million to Beatties Ford Road. But most of them are going towards infrastructure, and they're looking at the different intersections, Oakland, LaSalle, Catherine Simmons, making sure that what can we do at those key intersections that will still be preserved when a future streetcar runs through the place beyond JCSU. What we don't want to do is to invest in something and then have to tear it up
Exactly.
again. So, but one of the things that we can do very well right now on Beatties Ford proper itself is create some placemakings for those major intersections and then widen sidewalks to get people. But then on streets like Oakland, maybe LaSalle and Catherine Simmons have bike lanes that will bring neighbors to the main street. So I'll be glad to talk to you more about that in detail. But we've allocated about 11 million to take care of infrastructure on that corridor, including we issued a request for proposal for a city-owned property for someone to do affordable housing, I believe at Catherine Simmons as well, that we think this investment can support that. But putting a bike lane on that corridor will be challenging, and hence the reason why you want to have it on the streets that connect into Beatties Ford.
And I understood the reason for not on Beatties Ford Road. I was just, the route that I was told that was being planned just seemed too strenuous for normal people. It would be impossible for handicapped.
Yeah. I can take a look at that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can definitely take a look at that.
Ms. Marshall and Ms. Delahara, any questions regarding how this intersects with our schools?
Just to put some context around this too, when you talked about 400,000 people moving here in 20 years,
Yes.
do you have a figure in terms of how many children, how many school children you think that might entail?
I was expecting someone to ask me that.
I like numbers, so that's where I would go.
So that number includes children that are born here as well. I just don't have the percentage of them,
okay.
the breakdown. So it's not just people moving, but for the most part, it's a lot of people moving into Charlotte, but it also includes kids that are born here.
Okay.
But I can get that number for you to
Okay,
break down.
well,
yes.
because I think that's so important, because when we look at 20 years, and to sort of, to piggyback a little bit on Mr. Strain's comment, bonds, we can't build fast enough, and we can't replace those buildings of ours that are 50 years old fast enough. So we're sitting here looking at a 20-year and a 40-year time frame, and so some of the buildings that we've built recently, we're going to have to replace at some point. We obviously need to build more for this expected families.
Yes.
So there definitely is a sense of urgency amongst all this, and I'm so thankful that you are here and that you've done this work intentionally, because I feel like there has been definitely a siloed approach to this, and it's not done any of us any good.
I agree.
So now we have to work together as the county, as the city, and the schools in order to accomplish these things, and our community expects that of us. So I'm very thankful that you've included us in this conversation, and please center us in anything you do with us. What's your low-hanging fruit? What do you want to do first?
Yes.
That really sort of, and you were obviously centering this on CMS. So what do you want to do first that we are involved in with you?
So when I was going through Leadership Charlotte a couple years ago, one of the experiences that we had was to visit some of the titled schools and spent a day there. I'm a father of 7 daughters. All right. That's why I have no hair.
Having 7 girls, wow.
And the youngest is 11. And for the time that I spent in one of the title schools, I noticed that I started asking questions. Where do the kids come from? Where do they live? And it was so easy for me to pinpoint that housing is a major, major issue, not only for communities of color, but also low-income people. It impacts the children in terms of where they go to school and how they go to school and their performance. Spent an entire day asking questions and understanding some of the dynamics. This is a system. And so when people say, what's your priority here? I find it very hard to name one, but I always go back to housing. If we can make housing more accessible and affordable to people, we change the quality of lives of many. And it's a system. It will impact everything else. But when we think about it, what makes affordable housing, what makes housing unaffordable is not just the housing, it's also lack of transportation opportunities for people. Or if there are 250,000 people in Charlotte today who cannot drive, either because they don't have access to a vehicle or because they don't have driver's license. The fact is, some of these people rely on families, friends, taxi cab, Uber, or mobility to get them to one place or the other. And that's why I said earlier on that the cost of transportation in Charlotte is one of the highest in the country. So if we can fix those 2 things in my mind, invest in transportation, diversify neighborhoods where we can actually have multiple types of housing, we make it possible for people to be able to live a good quality of life and be able to get their kids to the schools that they want to get to. So in terms of low-hanging fruit, those will be it for me, housing, transportation. But again, it's a system. And you can't deal with one and ignore another because it's a ripple effect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Delahaye.
Yes, thank you very much. Many of my questions have already been brought up, so I won't, belabor the point, but maybe just kind of wrap up with a couple comments. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. I'm so pleased to hear you mention several times the importance of affordable housing being available in all parts of the city and accessible. I also just wanted to say I'm really glad that you're thinking about sidewalk accessibility, and if you don't mind me telling you briefly, this literally came up today with my own child. When I realized I needed to be here at the Government Center at 4 o'clock, I realized I couldn't pick up my child from school. And although I would trust her to walk home, and she was willing to do so, the one thing that kept me from allowing her to do that today is I didn't feel great about the sidewalks. And so we made arrangements for my husband to pick her up. And, fortunately, we were able to do that easily. But it's just a real example of how that plays out and how she could have walked home easily. But that was my one safety concern. So thank you for considering that. And also just, thank you for the thought about the complex the comprehensive public transit plan. I'm very excited about that. When my children were little, we used to spend our summers in Latin America, and we were hopping on public transit, going everywhere, and I would see hordes of kids, friends in their school uniforms, getting on public transit and doing what they need to do to get across town, and it can be done. It's obviously done all over the world, but to, I think, Ms. Fowler's point, and the collaboration that she and the superintendent spoke of, it will take education, it will take a culture shift in many ways, but I do feel like we have to sort of plan it, build it, and they will come. It can happen, and so I applaud the vision of having a comprehensive public transit plan and how we can culturally, make that shift, incorporate our students, incorporate all of our lifestyles to that model. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
So I think we've covered everyone who had questions. I just have one more quick question.
Yes.
And that is, and this is in the spirit of the plan, but probably one of those things that we don't have to wait until 2040. And as you're talking about equity with transit, I can give you a real world example of that as well. We have this wonderful, really powerful partnership with CPCC called College and Career Promise, where CMS high school students can take CPCC courses with the tuition covered, and it's a game-changing opportunity for our students, and it's good for CPCC too. It helps them with their enrollment. And there are some schools where the enrollment is lower than it might be because the kids can't get to CPCC without taking a million bus transfers, and there just isn't enough time in the day to get there in time. So I wonder if that's something where our people could work with your people to identify some of those hot spots, like maybe it's Olympic High School in the Harper campus, or maybe it's West Mech and the closest CPCC campus to that, and figure out a better bus route.
Yes.
That would be a huge economic mobility game changer. I mean, there's some real eye-opening barriers that I think we could identify and dismantle without having to wait 40 years.
Oh, I would love to. Is that Superintendent Winston that I need to work with?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Absolutely.
So we've got two things we need to work on together.
Awesome,
three.
good concrete next
Yeah,
steps.
I would definitely like to do that. After you and I spoke some weeks ago and you brought something like that up, I already started to talk to our transit folks.
Wonderful.
So I'd like to sit down and address that. It doesn't have to wait for the 2040 plan.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
bringing
you.
this to us and having that collaborative spirit. And it's very refreshing, and appreciate colleagues for investing the time in this in our board meeting tonight.
Thank you very much to all of you for having me. I appreciate it, and I will be happy to come back in the future.
All right, and
All
thank
right
you,
then.
Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and same as Tyler said, happy to come back anytime, and please reach out to us if you ever need us or want to come over and join us at the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Are you meeting in person yet, or are you still on Zoom?
We are still 100% virtual.
Okay, well, that makes it even easier. Okay. Thank you all. So I am now going to turn to Board Member Lenora Shipp, who is the Chair of the Policy Committee, for the first reading of modifications to two board policies. The first is policy GCOA on teacher contracts. The next one is policy IKFE on graduation requirements. So Ms. Shipp, hand it over to you.
Thank you. Members of the board, the item before us tonight is the first reading of changes to policy GCOA, teacher contracts. This change primarily modifies the requirement for a teacher to be eligible for a 4-year contract renewal. The policy committee met on February 16th, 2021, to consider the changes before you tonight. The recommended changes were approved by the committee on a 3-1 vote. This policy change will have a public hearing at our March 9th, 2021 board meeting and our March 23rd, 2021 board meeting. The board will consider approval of the recommended changes at our March 23rd, 2021 meeting. With that, Madam Chair, I conclude the first reading of the policy GCOA. Our next policy, Exhibit IKFE, graduation requirements. Members of the board, the item before us tonight is the first reading of proposed changes to Exhibit IKFE, graduation requirements. The purpose of this recommended change is to align with DPI's changes regarding courses required for high school graduations. The policy committee met on February 16th, 2021 to consider the changes before you tonight. The recommended changes were approved by the committee on a 4-0 vote with the requested modified fast tracking of the policy. Therefore, this policy change will have a public hearing and vote at our meeting on March 9th, 2021. With that, Madam Chair, I conclude the first reading of policy IKFE. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Shipp. The next item on our agenda is, we've got the consent items. Is there a motion that the board approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Okay, we've got a motion from Ms. Byers-Bailey, a second from Ms. Shipp. Before we move to a vote, does any board member wish to pull any part of this item for individual consideration? Ms. Marshall?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull item C.
Item C as in cat?
Yes, item C is in cat.
Okay, thank you. Trying to hear through the mask. Any other items that would need to be pulled?
Madam Chair, I'm just looking for the consent
Okay.
list to confirm. Apologies. Good.
Okay. So first we will vote on the items, the consent agenda items minus item C. All those in favor of the motion except for item number C, please raise your hands. Any opposed? All right. So that was 9-0. Ms. Marshall, would you like to speak to item C?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very happy to highlight and bring forth this recommended approval of the construction phase for the replacement of the Lansdowne Elementary School. This has been a bit of a longer time coming. The Lansdowne School had the proposed contract. We had some changes in terms of site location and a couple other things that the city wanted some more clarification. Put us behind about a year, but happy to say that all those things have been worked through. We're bringing forward tonight a contract to build a new school on fields beside the old school, and then the old school will be taken down, and that will be the place where the new sports fields will be. But this is just going to be a wonderful facility. That community is so excited about this beautiful new building, and it's going to be a 45 classroom elementary school. And I'm just thrilled to be able to highlight this tonight and move this forward, because we're going to have students in there August 2022, which seems right around the corner. So they're going to get busy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve consent item C?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion from Ms. Cheek, a second from Ms. De La Hara. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Okay. Madam Clerk, our consent agenda is approved. So now we are going to move on to our action items for the night. Our first action item is consideration of proposed modifications to the superintendent's employment agreement. I turn to Board Vice Chair Thelma Byers-Bailey to make this motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to move that we accept the proposed amendments to the superintendent's employment agreement that was originally executed on August 2nd, 2019. An overview of the modifications are: the contract term will be from July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2025. The base salary increase will be increased from $280,000 to $288,400 per year, which represents a 3% increase. The increased local paid leave will be from 10 days to 20 days, and a modification of the term of convenience provision that removes the 60-day notice requirement and adds severance pay that equals 24 months of the superintendent's base pay or the remaining time of his contract, whichever is less.
Okay, is there a second? So we've got a motion from Ms. Byers-Bailey, a second from Ms. Sawyer. Ms. Byers-Bailey, would you like to speak to your motion?
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to say that these changes were well-deserved. It takes the contract gives him an entire 4 years, because anytime he's trying to hire somebody, he can only hire somebody for as long as his contract lasts. And so this gives him we've got several slots in our management that need to be replaced, and we need to be able to offer a 4-year contract for those. And so this will give him that flexibility.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion, colleagues, before we vote? No? Well, Mr. Strain.
Madam Chair, executive incentives and rewards are directly tied to corporate performance, or they certainly should be. And I find no joy in bringing this forward, but unfortunately our district performance metrics are not where they could or should be. We see our student performance and our market share in decline. And that was a true statement before COVID. Never mind delivering on the ambitious objectives of the CMS strategic plan. I cannot support executive rewards by way of extension, raise, and very significant expansion of benefits, given the results and the performance of our district, for which our chief executive should be fully responsible and accountable. So I'm sorry to say I can't support what's been put forward here. Thank you.
Ms. Cheek?
Yes, thank you. This is not the first superintendent contract I've voted to extend. This is year 11, so there's been a few. But it's definitely the first superintendent contract I've ever voted to extend, which I will be voting yes, where we are still recovering and just crawling out of the midst of a global pandemic, both physical, health, and economic. The strain that has put on our school district in every facet is really immeasurable, and we probably won't see the full effects of that until this contract is about up, Mr. Winston, because it's going to be a few years before the real impact.
You can't. That was too perfect.
I'm really bummed.
It was good. We're back, okay.
Well, darn, what I said was really good. And it was basically that, Mr. Winston, I'm just honored to be serving on a board with you, and I'll be voting yes for this. And thank you and your staff for the heroic work that has been done and will continue to be done to get this ship sailing quickly towards academic success, equitable education for all students, and to return CMS to the pinnacle of education in the United States. So thank you. And all the other stuff I said before the streaming died was really good.
Dr. Jones.
Yes, it was, Ms. G. Yes, what you had to say was extremely on point. I think as a person that has served in CMS as a teacher and now as a board member since 1970 when we first integrated schools, those were factors that were controllable. And we thought we had gone through some very difficult times, and we did, and it worked out for the best. But these were times that are just not in our control, and I really appreciate the immense efforts that you've put into it. And people may not realize, but it's a 24-hour job. I mean 24-hour job. And you have stepped into that role in very fine fashion, and I really appreciate your service.
Anyone else on this side of the table? Me and my peripheral
I am
vision.
being told that YouTube still streamed the comments live.
Yeah.
So they still exist
posterity.
in perpetuity.
Yes.
Anyone on this side of the table?
Yeah,
Who did I miss?
Oh, me, sorry.
Ms. De La Hara?
I've raised my hand too late.
Okay, sorry about
No,
that.
I just want to mention that, well, first of all, I'm very excited that we're extending the contract tonight. I echo all the sentiments that my colleagues, Ms. Cheek and Dr. Jones, have made. It just occurred to me also that, there are times for constructive feedback, and two times I'd like to mention when that does happen, when it's inappropriate, is during our evaluation process. We do have a time to give the superintendent feedback, and that's certainly welcomed, and I thought that process went really well this year. There's also one-on-one time that I know from my personal experience, I feel like the superintendent has been very receptive, to hear me out on my opinions on things. And I just thought that was worth mentioning, that there are times in the process where there's opportunities, because of course we all need constructive feedback and the opportunity to make change and to grow. And I feel like the superintendent has always been a person who has sought that and welcomed that, and dare I say, maybe taken on little bits and pieces of some advice that, maybe I had to offer. So I appreciate that. But really, I appreciate your commitment, first and foremost, to the students, both their academic achievement and their social and emotional well-being, and just the environment that you create, the culture that you, I know, even want to create more of. But of course, the pandemic has thrown a couple monkey wrenches, if you will, into all of our plans. But I have great faith that we'll get back on track and come back even stronger. So thank you.
Is a vote of confidence, and also a vote that, and a commitment to pursuing the path that we're on. And because we'll never get where we want to go if we change paths frequently. So I think we're set on a path, and we need to commit to that path wholeheartedly. So thank you.
Ms. Shipp.
and I just want to add, and I think Ms. De La Hara was saying some of the things I want to add to, is that I thank you for, how you are so reflective, and you're taking a feedback and crucial conversations, which has been so beneficial to have. And one of the biggest things about this is change is a process, not an event. And I thank you for your hard work to help us get to change where we want to be and to look forward. So we're looking forward to how you grow and develop in this process. That's important, coming on as you did in a time like this. So thank you for the work. We continue to look forward to your leadership and that growth to move us forward. And that's why you need the change. You need the time for the change and the process, and that's what this does. Thank you.
Okay. It takes courage to step up and do the work that you do. Obviously, it's a very public role. It's a role that touches hundreds of thousands of lives cumulatively, if you look at our children, their families, and our employees. And particularly in the pandemic, there is no decision that isn't going to make some people very angry. And even without a pandemic, that's the job that you've accepted. And that takes a lot of courage, and there are always naysayers. And I just thank you for your integrity and your grace and how you do the work. I think it is because of your integrity and your humble sort of leadership, style of leadership, that you have great trust from your staff, from your employees. I saw that yesterday visiting 5 schools with you. I saw how you interacted with the custodians and how they interacted with you. I see that rapport and that trust that you have with the staff of CMS. And I think that part of why we've held together as a family through this nightmare of 14 months of this pandemic is because of your integrity and your style of leadership. And so I thank you for that, and I'm proud to vote for this contract extension and 3% raise, and look forward to carrying on with the work and building back better. I know we have not a second to lose as we restore normalcy and take advantage of the disruption of the pandemic to innovate. But ultimately, we do have a lot of work to do on behalf of the kids that we serve, both academically and social emotionally. And I'm looking forward to just continuing on that path that we're on. And thank you for your partnership. All right, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please let it be known by a show of hands. Any opposed? Okay, Madam Clerk, that passes by a vote of 8-1. Yeah, would you like to make a comment? Sure, absolutely.
Absolutely, and I'll be very brief, but Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Board of Education, thank you. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate your vote of confidence in me tonight, and I wanted to simply express my heartfelt appreciation. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge an incredibly dedicated team that I have working alongside with me in this endeavor. And it is a huge and important endeavor. And it's never lost on us each day the role and the impact that we play in the lives of so many. So I will wrap up by saying that together we remain committed to serving the students, the families, as well as the staff members of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Okay, our next action item, moving right along, is to consider approving modifications to our after-school and before-school enrichment programs. Before we act on this, I will turn to the superintendent to introduce this item and to make a recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I am going to ask that our Chief Academic Officer, Brian Kingsley come forward. He is accompanied by Colette Jeffrey, who oversees our after-school enrichment program, as well as Christine Pajot, our Chief Human Resources Officer. And this report that Mr. Kingsley will share this evening is an acknowledgement of some challenging times that we're in that have been brought on by the pandemic. And so we are in a position where we're having to make some very difficult and challenging decisions. And you will hear that momentarily, but wanted to turn it over at this time to Mr. Kingsley.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent, good evening. As our superintendent eloquently just shared with us, we're here to discuss a challenging and very difficult scenario with all of you about a service, a 5-star service that has meant a great deal to this district for quite a long time. As you know, our after-school educational enrichment programs, ACEP, as well as our BCEP programs that have take place before school, have been in place in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools since 1985. They serve up to 8,000 students each year, both before school and after school, across 95 of our school sites that are licensed child care facilities. We are the largest licensed child care provider in all of Mecklenburg County. These services, both before school and after school, help mitigate challenges that many of our families have for supervision, enrichment opportunities for children, as well as remediation. That continues to extend to very early morning to late in the evenings, as well as opportunities when teacher planning days, spring break, and winter break. One of the things that has made our child care programs and services great is that they're not just academic, but they're enrichment driven. They're very much focused on the social emotional wellness of children, their physical wellness as well, and they have opportunities to partner with multiple entities across the community to infuse science, technology, engineering, and math components, coding, and other opportunities that make these experiences for students as well as staff and families incredibly joyful. We know that these services over time have also continued to extend themselves into summer as well as during both of our breaks during the traditional years of both spring break and winter break. It's important to note as we think about this conversation here today is that our ACEP fund is self-sustaining and self-supporting. It's run on fees that our parents pay in order for their children to attend these programs. It's always been that way since 1985, and it's been a very healthy fund that we've continued to generate to continue to make this program a great program for all people who are involved. But as a result of the pandemic, the health of our enterprise fund is no longer as healthy as it once was. And in fact, we're here today because it's actually very unhealthy. It's a scenario where we're actually running at a great deficit that we'll talk about in a more significant manner in just a minute. On your screen here, you see a 2-year trend of staffing as well as students that you can see just prior to the pandemic last year, as well as what we're experiencing now with staffing, our staffing models, as well as the number of students that are currently enrolled across the program. Last year, we provided services both before school and after school to just about 7,000 students over the course of the year and had just over 500 staff. You can see that there has been some attrition to our staff. We did not hire vacant positions as vacancies became available as a result of our low student enrollment. But the majority of that attrition was with part-time positions while we've continued to carry and support, and rightfully so, many of it and all of our full-time staff. But as you can see, our staffing model today still reflects supporting thousands of students when each and every day across our 85 sites that are currently open, we provide services to just over 900. Our staff is very important to making this go. It wouldn't happen without them. We wouldn't be a 5-star program without their leadership. I'm flanked today by the Director of After School Enrichment Programs, Ms. Colette Jeffries. So I want to thank publicly for your incredible and thoughtful leadership in navigating this very difficult scenario with staff as well as with your central office team. This staff makes up both part-time and full-time staff across the district, and as you can see, as a result of the pandemic, we also have several staff that have been on leave at some point during the course of this school year. This is a very important slide to give you a better sense of the revenues that we generated last year compared to this year. It's a snapshot in time that reflects a period of July 1 through January 31st, 2 years at a time. If you have an opportunity to take a look at that, just a year ago, we generated over $8.5 million in revenue to support a program that had almost, over 500 staff. There's over $6 million of that revenue that was devoted as a self-supporting enterprise fund, went directly to supporting the salaries of our various staff. Obviously, other types of expenses around food, enrichment opportunities, materials, and supplies. But you have an opportunity, if I can orient your eyes and attention to the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you can begin to see that we're actually this year, from July through January 31st, and that's actually 2021. I apologize for the typo at the top there. We've been running at a deficit of almost $4.5 million. And so we're here today to discuss that scenario because as a result of that challenge and the continued projected loss based upon our existing infrastructure, we are making the recommendation to make some difficult changes to our program temporarily. As I shared with you, it's important to note that we are the largest licensed child care provider in Mecklenburg County. That is incredibly significant because these services and being licensed allows us to provide necessary subsidies to families who qualify due to certain socioeconomic conditions to be able to participate. And some of those subsidies are partial and some of them are full. And it's really important to note that as a district, we continue to supplement those services for any of our students who may be in transition or experiencing some form of homelessness, that we're continuing to also use Title I dollars to support access to these various programs. We've also received in the past some federal grants to continue to support specific sites to expand these types of high quality services. The federal grant that we have this year is still with one school, and that comes to a conclusion at the close of this particular school year. But again, I just want to share, we do run a 5-star high quality program. There has been significant implications to our enrollment that is not a result of our ACEP staff. It's not a result of us not having a high quality program, because that is in fact what we do have. But we know the pandemic has provided multiple scenarios for families to grapple with, and they simply have different choices to make as members of our community. We know that over 1/3 of our student body, their families have committed to a full-time virtual schooling experience this year as a result of a personal family decision in terms of what they felt was in the best interest of their child. That signals to us that many of our families have identified ways to support children at home that no longer require a before school or an after school supervision or enrichment experience for their students. We also know that our community has stepped up to the plate in so many different ways. Our nonprofit community, our parks and recreation communities, all of the municipalities, as well as the faith-based community and nonprofit sector, to stand up remote learning sites across the community that are available to our students for supports, especially during times of remote learning. Why this is significant is the majority of those programs, if not close to all of them, are free. As I shared with you earlier, ACEP is a fee-based structure. Families now have, not competition, these are not licensed child care facilities, but they do have alternate options available to them in the community that many of our families are choosing as a result of the stressors that are in place on all of us as a result of the pandemic. We also know that many adults in our community are working from home for the first time as a result of the pandemic. It's not just our school system that's impacted, it's all employers. And as a result of that, that's putting some families in a position to support their children at home before school and after school, where in previous years that wasn't the case. Transportation has been a constraint at scale to provide all of our students access to before-school programs and after-school programs, simply by us as a district making an important decision to prioritize our transportation fleet to be responsive to our needs for in-person learning and meeting the accommodations that are necessary for social distancing, that we are in some instances able to accommodate case-by-case unique scenarios, but doing that at scale for all students involved is simply not a reality for us at this time. Now, what I would like to share with you on this slide that I think is incredibly important is at the bottom. That at this point in the year, the reserves that we've had built as a result of having a healthy enterprise fund has now zeroed out. And we are running at a deficit on average, taking out any other kind of scenario of stimulus dollars, local leave options that are available to our employees, that we are running at a deficit of almost approximately $800,000. What we anticipate that total projected loss for the entire school year, based upon the recommendation that we will make to you this evening, is approximately $2 million in projected loss. We are continuing to identify other funding sources as a result of our enterprise fund not being able to support that. And we do believe that some of the federal stimulus dollars that will be available to our district at some point this spring may be an opportunity for us to explore, but we're continuing to wait for more specific guidance from our state and the federal government to outline our ability to be able to do that. On the screen here, you can see our recommendation for you this evening. As I shared with you, we have 95 licensed child care facilities in our schools across the district. This year, up to this point today, we have 85 sites across our community that are open for services. They are primarily all of our elementary sites that are open and all of our K-8 sites. We were not able to open our middle school ASAP sites this year, unfortunately, due to low enrollment that did not support our ability to open those particular sites, and there are 10 of those. We have strategically, though, deployed all of our middle school ASAP staff to our elementary sites to support social distancing measures and ensuring that we can provide the supports to keep those programs open. The list of schools that you see on the screen, there are 25 of them. The recommendation is that these 25 licensed child care sites remain open for the remainder of the year. I'll say that again. The recommendation here today is that we have 25 ASAP sites with adequate enrollment, that they will remain open through the end of this year. That's until May 28, 2021. We applied a very specific strategy to identifying who stayed open for the remainder of the year, and let me explain that to you now. First and foremost, if you see any school's name listed on the screen that does not have an asterisk next to it, those are our highest enrolled schools and child care facilities across the district, meaning they have at least 12 students enrolled at one of the tracks, an A track or a B track, that is allowing them to be one of the highest enrolled facilities in our child care fleet. What I can share with you, though, is having at least 12 students is not a financially stable model. At a minimum, we need 24 students attending a program each and every day simply to break even based upon the staffing and the supports that are required to keep the program open. So the challenges even supporting these 25 sites are still in place. The sites that you see on your screen that have an asterisk next to them are chosen for various reasons as well. They may not have at least 12 students, but we felt that it was incredibly important to provide you this evening a recommendation that represented the geography of our community, where we had sites that would stay open across all 6 of our learning communities. We wanted to make sure that there was an extra emphasis on underserved communities across the district, and I'm hopeful that you'll see all of those schools represented here. It's important to note that all of the other schools, as I shared, there are 85 current schools that are open, ASAP sites that are open. All schools that are not listed on this screen, the recommendation is that they would begin to temporarily close effective at the end of their services on April 1st of this year. As I shared with you earlier, our middle school ASAP sites had not yet opened, but we do want to signal to our parents that in the event that they are interested in cross-enrolling, their children from their current site into a site that we will recommend to all of you this evening that you vote to keep open. We will allow that to happen and support them in their efforts to do that. We cannot promise transportation to other sites, but we certainly can try to work with families on a case-by-case basis. It's important to note, as I shared with you earlier, these 25 sites represent the total, the geography of our Mecklenburg County. And it was important that all 6 of our learning communities were represented. And as you see an opportunity here to kind of see how this spread plays out across our community, I also think it's important to note when you look at the west side of Charlotte, we did deeply analyze considering opening another site in that area, Renaissance West. We just simply do not have any student attendance in those particular programs in that community as a result of other options that are available. Currently today, Renaissance West has only 2 students enrolled in their ACEP program, and our recommendation would be to support them identifying another local child care facility close by. When we looked at the sites that we are recommending to you this evening, beyond the geography, beyond the equity in the decision, it was also us trying to identify how do we minimize student displacement from those who are currently enrolled. As I shared with you earlier, we have 901 students today enrolled in our ACEP program, either before school or after school. This will not just impact staff, this will also impact some of our families that are in programs that will close. Currently today, we will have 312 students that are in our A track that would be displaced from child care services, and 165 that are in our B track. And you can see how that breaks down across our respective learning communities, and we try to be as strategic as possible of mitigating that displacement, especially in high areas of need, and I'm hopeful that you see that well represented in this particular slide. It's important, as I shared and spoke just over the last 2 slides about the impact on families and impact on students, this also ultimately has impact on valued CMS staff and family members. Currently today, we have 303 staff members, both at the school level and central office level, that are employed to provide these five-star services across our community. The recommendation that we are making is that all of those employees will stay employed until at least April 1st of this year. We will begin making recommendations to you tonight that our staff members that are at our various school-based sites is that a reduction in force would take place for 217 ACEP staff members effective on April 2nd, and those are our school-based staff. We will also be making a recommendation to you this evening that we will also apply a reduction in force to several central office staff, and there would be 7 of them, and that would also go into effect on April 2nd. It's important to note, as a result of these particular employees, valued employees, being certified or classified as non-career status, our current existing policy gives the superintendent specific discretion on how best to apply a reduction in force strategy to these impacted staff. And we will take a 2-pronged approach in terms of how that plays out, both for school-based ACEP staff as well as central office ACEP staff. And let me take a moment to explain that to you. What makes these programs a 5-star program is not just the service, it's the relationship that's at the center of these staff with the community, with their parents, with the students. And so we will be applying a site-based strategy to our school-based staff that in the event that our sites that I recommended stay open, the staff that are associated to those particular sites may not be impacted by the reduction in force. In a certain instance, they may. In some instances, some of the facilities that I shared with you on a previous slide that we are recommending to stay open through the remainder of the year, in some instances, they are overstaffed. And we know that in certain instances, we will need to right-size the staffing model at certain sites that will still stay open, and we will need to do that by seniority status at those respective sites. For our 12 central office staff members, we will be applying a strategy that is by position, by seniority. which will be really important because our intent is to reopen. This is a temporary closing. We are not surrendering our childcare licenses across any of these facilities. Our intent is when the demand begins to reflect prior year's enrollment, we want to begin opening up all of our ACEP sites as rapidly as possible. But the reason we believe tonight that we need to recommend to all of you a reduction in force be applied, is that we simply don't know when that demand will come back. We are hopeful that it comes back with the start of a new school year, a fresh start, and the ability for us to begin to rehire rapidly, but we simply don't know that. But our commitment to you this evening through this recommendation is to close this school year strong with the 25 sites through the remainder of the year, to continue to provide high-quality services across all open 85 sites until at least April 1st, but to also use these 25 schools as a commitment to the community of where we are at a minimum going to begin next year providing these services. And we will continue to grow and reopen based upon the demand and the registration, with the idea of needing to get back to a minimum enrollment of 24 students per program for us to run a financially stable model, which I know is important to the community as well as all of you. It's important to note, and I'll close with just two last slides, that while this is very difficult news to share with our staff, we met with all potentially impacted staff on Friday, so they weren't finding out this evening by watching this on Facebook or YouTube, and we met with impacted principals across our district on Friday as well. That our HR team, under the guidance of Ms. Christine Peugeot, has been doing an incredible job of providing them opportunities to stay employed, whether it's through our district or through other opportunities. Every one of our current ACEP staff members, with the exception of one, and it's just because she's a little young, she's only 20 years old, they're all eligible to be non-certified substitutes. I've heard you as board members talk about our need to bring substitutes into our buildings now more than ever before. This is an opportunity for all of those employees, amongst other opportunities, bus drivers, scenarios where we have in the district vacancies. We want to support all of these potentially impacted employees by trying to identify either internal opportunities that they're eligible to apply for, as well as think about external opportunities where this year, beginning on April 1st, the timing is actually somewhat perfect in terms of when the ACEP sites we are projecting, potentially based upon your approval this evening, might temporarily close. We will begin employing North Carolina Education Corps members to begin supporting two efforts in our district and in our community. One, we will be hiring 70 literacy tutors that will be working part-time up to 25 hours a week, as well as 35 contact tracers to help support our respective learning communities and school principals to continue to keep our health safe and monitor the impact of COVID-19 both in our community and our schools. In some instances, these opportunities may actually make some of our part-time staff eligible for a raise. We are going to give all of our ACEP staff members first priority to apply for these NC Ed Corps positions and do everything that we can to support all of them. But I do want to note this particular opportunity could only support up to 105 of them. We know that there's more to go, and we're committed to figuring out ways to support them the best that we can. And lastly, I'll share is that we want to make sure that we continue to provide supports to our families. I shared with you that we will have some families that their children will be displaced from programs potentially on April 2nd, and we want to make sure that they are aware of various opportunities that exist in their local community that they may want to consider participating in post-April 1. As you know, we have many remote learning facilities that are open and up and running in our community. We have become aware that there are 348 slots available across 28 community partners, and we will work strategically with parent by parent, connecting with them with these options for them to consider if they so wish to participate in as a family. So as I shared with you earlier, we're committed to doing everything we can to support our family, our employees, as well as our students and parents during this very difficult scenario. But I want to close our presentation by just saying, allowing me to say thank you for bringing this information to you this evening, and I'm happy, along with our team, to answer any questions that you might have.
Dr. Jones?
I don't think I have so much the question. I know this has been difficult.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know what this program represents. Long before I became a member of this board, I was aware of quite a few of these programs and the difference that they make in children's educational trajectory. And it is awfully difficult. I found that out through working with a site to become 5-star. I said, my goodness, it is absolutely, I mean, you have to be stellar in pretty much in what you're doing. So 5-star programs are a result of highly trained, qualified staff. And so I was somewhat relieved to hear you say that they aren't just going to evaporate. And that's what I want to reiterate, because it takes a monstrous amount of energy, dollars, and everything else to get people at that level. And we do have a number of people that, if we were to try to start over and build that kind of staff expertise again, would be tremendous. So this is, I think you've made the best decisions around something that is personally, I think, a pretty heartbreaking thing when we look at what we are trying to do in terms of not just being an after-school program or before-school program, but really lifting children's performance and excellence in places that are qualified and safe. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Marshall.
Thank you. And the 5-star comments that you made are so appropriate, because they don't just happen overnight. So to that point, the licensure that goes into a 5-star location and the employees, can you tell me how long would we have? I don't think we're going to have to restart all that. How long does that last? What kind of runway do we have, and do our employees have with that licensure work?
Great question, Ms. Marshall. Thank you. So first and foremost, let's talk about the license that applies to our facilities and our ASAP program. We are not surrendering our license to those programs. In typical years, a temporary closure is allowable up to 6 months, but we are not functioning under typical times. And so the spirit of this is to, reopen as quickly as possible. And we have, the support of child care resources to make sure that as long as we're continuing to move forward with that intent, with that path, our licenses are not in jeopardy of being surrendered at this time. So I feel confident about that. I also would like to speak with you specific to the employees with some confidence as well, is that they have gone through some significant background checks in order to be a part of a licensed 5-star program. And all of their paperwork and background checks are good for up to 3 years for each of those respective employees. So in the event that we are able and they are willing to come back to our program under healthy conditions of hopefully, and the demand is high, we should be able to hit the ground running. But we just don't know whether that's going to be on August 1 or at a later time. And so I want to make sure I'm not over-promising to anybody, but our intent is clear that we want to open up all 95 of our programs as quickly as possible.
Okay, that's great to know. And I think that's so important. I think that as we've been thinking about this and looking at the hard facts at the bottom line, knowing we have to do something, but really concerned about next steps for our employees, that there are options for them that I know you all are working on with all haste in terms of the tutoring, in terms of substitutes and long-term substitutes that we have in our staffing right now in our schools. And then also, could you speak to summer programming? We know when we're in deep planning for all of that. So I feel very confident that there's going to be a number of positions available. Could you speak to some of those specifics, and I see Ms. Peugeot coming up here, so I know she's got a real handle on that.
Yes, and thank you for bringing up that question and for the opportunity to talk about what is available to these very valued team members. So in addition to the things that were already mentioned, one position that we are definitely actively recruiting for is our bus drivers. So people can earn starting wages around $15.75 per hour. We offer an in-house training program, so we can provide supports to those employees and essentially fast-track them because they've already been employees with us, and we can put them through a faster-paced program because their background screens have already taken place. We also typically have vacancies across the district in various different departments and schools for which many of the staff may also qualify. So we're going to do our best to support these employees and team members in seeing and understanding what those opportunities are and highlighting them, so to speak. While we can't guarantee hiring in any of those positions, we can certainly make that access available to them and make sure that the employees understand as we have one-on-one meetings as soon as possible this week with staff who are impacted, that they know what those opportunities are. And I'd love to turn it back over to Mr. Kingsley to talk about the summer programming aspect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Peugeot. I'm glad that you brought up summer programming, because we plan, I think, talking about that even in more detail, I think, at this Friday or at an upcoming meeting. But it's going to be an all-hands-on-deck approach, and we know not just teachers, but we're going to need to think about instructional assistants and the opportunity that I shared with you earlier around these North Carolina Education Corps members. These tutoring services would not just be throughout the remainder of this year, but they would persist throughout the summer. We had received as a district almost about $1.7 million from the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund that we are working in partnership with Reed Charlotte to strategically deploy literacy tutors to some of our students that are struggling with foundational skills to be ready for third grade proficiency. And with these 70 particular positions that are open, we believe that we're going to be able to impact positively up to 700 children. And we're looking to expand those efforts. I mean, not just with these 70. So there are more details on that to come, but we are building that out, and we certainly would look to providing opportunities that these great people would be eligible for.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, I first want to say thank you so much, all of you that are working. I want to say thank you to Ms. Jeffries for all you've done with this program. I've had the opportunity to work with many after-school enrichment programs and before-school experience programs, and I know how dedicated the staff is. I know the experience level these staff members have and how much they contribute to the school's development. And like you said, when we think about the summer programs and all the programs, this is the staff that could quickly connect with the needs of children because they know what's been going on in the school setting. And they do a great job of that. So this is a difficult situation when you talk about reduction of force. But I do thank you for being so strategic with the process of making sure these valuable employees will have other opportunities for employment. And I think we definitely don't want to lose them in any shape or form because of the work that they do. And so thank you for that, because I know the literacy tutoring, the substitute teacher positions, there's so much this group has to offer. And I think you've just done a great job of recognizing that, the whole team, Ms. Peugeot, all of you all, because this is what we want. We want people who have been valuable to CMS, and that makes a difference for our children, to stay on board, to continue to do that in some form or fashion. So thank you. I just want to say thank you to all of you for the work.
Anybody else before we go to the motion? Okay. I'll thank you also for, I mean, the message that I'm getting here is that this is not going away forever or being phased out forever. I personally, when I read the tea leaves, I feel like the demand will be back as schools open up again and as parents get back into work outside of the homes. I think that's coming sooner rather than later. And while academics are our core business, I think that the the need for what these five-star sites do, along with the incredibly talented and well-trained employees that are working in the ASEP sites. That's going to be essential to rebuilding, all the rebuilding that our students have to do for, the tumult that they've been through with learning through the pandemic. And so whether that's, ASEP programming that's aligned to our academics, or whether it's enrichment that builds upon what they're learning in school and makes it more engaging and fun. I just think that's going to be a real important strategy as we rebuild after the pandemic. So I'm glad that you've found a way to, the bottom line is we don't have the money we can't go into a deficit. That's not a reality for public schools. You're not allowed to do that. So we've got to scale it back right now. But I'm glad you found a way to do it so that we can pivot and, I used the word pivot, but and rebuild as soon as we get through this darn pandemic. So with that, I'm going to turn to Ms. Marshall to make a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the superintendent's request to make the following changes to the after-school enrichment program. ASEP facilities located in middle schools which have not already opened will not open for the remainder of the year. The 85 ASEP facilities that are already open will continue operating through April 1st, 2021. Effective April 5th, 2021, CMS will close all but 25 ASEP locations and operate those 25 sites for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you. Ms. Marshall has made the motion. Do we have a second? A second from Ms. Shipp. Any further discussion or debate before I call for the vote? All right, all in favor of the motion, please let it, I'm sorry, Ms. Marshall, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I'm fine. We can go ahead to vote.
Okay, you've said your piece already. Okay. All in favor of the motion, please let it be known by a show of hands. Any opposed? Okay, Madam Clerk, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to just take a moment to simply acknowledge the tremendous support that our ASEP team members have provided and continue to provide to our community, including this CMS parent. And we look forward to restoring this valuable service as quickly as possible. To that end, I do want to let families know that they can begin registering now for next year. Information is available on our website, and so we want to be able to expedite this process of bringing back this service. So I did want to let our families know they can begin registering now.
All right. Well, thank you. So colleagues, we have two reports tonight. The first is going to be a report on readiness metrics, as well as an update on in-person instruction. And I will turn to the superintendent for this report and this update.
Good evening again, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Education. We are in our second week of returning our students and staff members to our buildings for in-person learning. This week, we have just over 57,000 students attending in-person learning in our schools. And we have long awaited these days, seeing students and staff in our hallways, in our classrooms, after so much preparation into making our schools safe. It was a rewarding experience to visit about a dozen schools over the past few weeks and really have an opportunity to welcome our students, our teachers, and our support staff back into our buildings. And we have yet more to come in the coming weeks. We will welcome Rotation B of our middle and high school students into the classroom, and that will soon be followed by Rotation C. We remain diligent about safety protocols and practices, and we are equally excited about the coming weeks as we welcome approximately 36,000 more students to walk through our halls of our traditional middle and high schools. And speaking of rotations, we are working on a revised calendar for the middle and high school rotations to help balance in-person instructional days across all three groups. We look forward to recommending a revised calendar at a future Board of Education meeting, which will also include dates for assessments on that calendar. And so tonight we are going to hear our metrics readiness report from Mr. Damon Willis, and then immediately following him, we will hear an update on our return to in-person learning from Dr. Matt Hayes, our Deputy Superintendent in charge of academics. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Mr. Willis.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Distinguished board members, we're going to begin with our readiness dashboard here. We'll start with our public health metrics. Our case rate per 100,000 remains in red, with 217.3 positive cases. That is down from last week where we were at 266.5. In terms of our test positivity percentage, this week we're at 7.6%, and we remain in that yellow column. Last week we were at 9.3%. Moving down to our district level case monitoring, schools with at least one positive case. This week we're at 82 schools remaining in red. That is an uptick compared to last week when we were at 73 schools. Now taking a look at our schools with quarantined individuals, we remain in green for that metric. Next, we'll take a look at school level case monitoring. First, we'll start with cases in a school. We remain in yellow with 36 schools with 2 or more cases, but none greater than 10. And last week we were at 31 schools. In terms of our school clusters, we remain in green for that metric. And in terms of our individuals in active quarantine, we also remain in green. Now taking a look at our district operational metrics. In terms of child nutrition, we remain in green for that metric. And we remain in green for transportation as well. Moving down to custodial staff coverage, we remain in yellow for that metric at 84.9%, which is a slight uptick from last week at 83.8%. Finally, our nurses, full-time nurse coverage, remains at 73% in yellow status. And we'll end with our school readiness metrics. We remain in green in every category here. Instructional staff at 94.4%. School facilities, 100% in green. Infection control and PPE supplies, 100%. And health and safety training, above 95% in green. And next, we will shift to our at-a-glance document. Sorry, one moment, please. Should be photos. There we go. Thank you, thank you. In terms of our at-a-glance document, We'll first begin by looking at the number of new positive cases for students this week, which is 47. That is an uptick in contrast to last week when we were at 31. In terms of our total number of positive cases for employees, this week we're at 36, which is down from last week at 49. And finally, we'll end with our school list. Let's see here. No. It's a PDF, so maybe we. Sorry, folks, one moment, please, as we take a look at our school list. Or maybe we're excluding that one.
Yeah, that's on the ones that I had then.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, folks. In terms of our school list, we won't be reviewing that tonight, but that is available on the CMS website for everybody to take a look at. So at this time, thank you all, and I will turn it over to Dr. Matt Hayes.
And I know you did update that school list for the public on Monday, I believe.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yours is this one. That's it.
Very good. Good. So thank you very much. We'd just like to kind of update everybody this, right now on our return to in-person learning, not only for the 15th, which included all of our elementary K-8s and then our EC special populations that we have in our school, but also on our middle and high school who have now been in rotation for the first week starting yesterday. So return to in-person. At this point in time, buses are running about 97% on time, staying close to where we were when we at the pre-pandemic schedule. One of the things that we've seen in many of our hallways is new signage to help students at arrivals and then transitions to go smoothly. I will tell you, when they talk about our students being resilient and they talk about our students being quick learners, I saw several over at Mallard Creek High School that were redirecting staff on where to go because they were going opposite ways. So I will tell you that our students are looking at those and they are monitoring themselves and they are troubleshooting with staff at their schools, especially at the middle and high school, as they re-entered back into the schools. We also have our meal services that went well at our middle and high schools. And we want to say a huge thank you to our child nutrition, to all of our cafeteria managers that we have across the district for getting those ready and utilizing their resources to make sure that our students, even on their first days coming back, had a meal ready for them, waiting on them as they came through the door. So thank you to all of them. So by the numbers, right now we have 44,250 total number of students in the pre-K, K-8, and students with disabilities who returned on February the 15th. We have 13,300, which are the total number of students in middle and high school in rotation A. So we have a total of 57,550 students that are in person this week. And we also want to remind everybody, that's also including, we have 61,000 students that are enrolled in our Forward Mode Academy, and that number will increase as we continue to bring students back in person. Now, February the 15th, as you can see here, our superintendent was very photogenic on that day as he went out and was able to meet and see all the youngsters coming back to our school. I will tell you that the 15th was a return for our elementary students, our K-5s, and our K-8s, and then also our students with disabilities. Now, I will tell you that for those students, it was a very smooth transition. I don't know that we would have ever figured out that it would have just been as if they left a day ago that they returned. They came right back in, they jumped right into their routines, and it was perfect. I do want to say that I have a shout out to Cornelius Elementary School up at the Cougars. They did give me these socks.
Ooh.
Superintendent Winston, I have you a pair as well for going out and visiting. I will tell you that you know, there was a warm welcome at all the schools. And more than that, I will tell you that what we saw walking through the hallways is kids with excitement. I mean, you could see the little cheeks sticking up above the mask, and it was just excitement, and they were bouncing around. And so we appreciate all of our staff for welcoming those students back with a lot of energy and also with a lot of safety precautions. And you can see those here in the pictures. You see a check-in station here at the beginning of a school where you have those things. You see that our child nutrition individuals here that have meals and breakfast is ready for our students as they come in the door, making it a seamless process for students to get in a safe manner. Also, you will also notice that everyone in all these shots are not only social distancing the best they can, but also wearing masks at all times. So an update on face coverings. We do want to just make sure that everyone knows, in the last presentation we talked about gaiters and some other things, and really what we wanted to make sure that we aligned ourselves with is what the CDC stated. So we will continue to require face coverings, but we also want to make sure that everyone understands that with a face covering, we do expect that to be a dual layer with at least 2 to 3 ply. This is update. We've also updated this guidance for face coverings that has been shared with all of our CMS employees at this time. So what's next for middle and high school? Well, we know that we welcome those students in, that we're in our A rotation this week, and we were out, and it was, I will tell you, I had a high schooler at my house, and if you know, we've been having high school start at 8 o'clock when they were remote. We backed it up to 7:15. Folks, I'm going to tell you what, you would have thought that I had told her we were going to go back another 3 hours. Was not happy, but went ahead and got that extra sleep and was there and excited the next day, although she was remote. Did have an opportunity to go by the school and see those students as they came in, so that was enjoyable. We also know that on March 1st, we'll welcome the rotation of our B students, and then also on March 8th, we will welcome the rotation of our C students. As Superintendent Winston stated, we are aware that there are some, with our rotations, that some of those rotations are off a little bit. In an upcoming meeting, we will be revising the calendar to balance out those in-person instructional times in rotational groups to make sure it's balanced for the remainder of the year. We also hoped at that point in time to have clear guidance on end-of-year assessments that we can also bring forward as part of that calendar. So on the horizon, we want to make sure that everyone knows that we'll continue to monitor our schools and evaluate the opportunities for potentially increasing the frequency and the number of students that are attending in person. There's a couple things here that we have to make sure that we do. One is that we're adhering to all safety guidelines. That's going to drive us for the remainder of this year, no questions asked. In addition to the readiness metrics, we are also actively monitoring bus ridership, attendance, social distancing, and also child nutrition. We'll ask to our parents, make sure that our parents know. We do have parents out there, and we understand that. You've made a decision to hold your child at home during their rotation. We understand that. What we'd ask you to do is please make sure that you're communicating with your school at all times. Because what we're going to need to do over the next couple of days and next couple of weeks is we're going to start looking at what does ridership look like, right? So we've got to monitor that over several weeks to know whether we have the same number of buses we need, in which to make sure that we're observing social distancing, only 24 students per bus, and also being able to appropriately get students to where they need to be. So parents, it's key that you communicate if you're making that decision for your own child, that you are clear in stating that to your school so they know how to make sure that they count you, and also through that transportation. Attendance as well, please make sure that at all times that you are logging in and that you're attending on your rotation. It's key for us to be able to know and give us further information on knowing when we can increase the rotation and potentially increase the frequency for our students. And then social distancing, I will tell you that we did not see that as an issue. I did not see that as an issue when I walked around and visited schools. Teachers are doing a great job. Folks, I tell you, I don't know how to say this enough. Every single one of us, if we had the opportunity to send an email to every single teacher in this district, we should do so. because they are doing everything they can right now. They are buckling it up, and they are in those classrooms, and they are teaching our kids, and it is amazing. And you walk in some of the classrooms, and they've got some students online, and they got the other ones that are in person, and they're making it happen. And I just want to say thank you to all of them and lift up the work that they've done in planning and execution of this work. It's critical to our students and meeting their needs, so thank you. And then, February 22nd, we brought in our middle and high schools. As you see here, we want to make sure that everyone does understand that we have not sprung ahead yet in our time. So our high schoolers are coming to school in the dark a little bit, right? But we want to show here a picture of what it looks like when you have a very efficient process that's in place, that's executed well by a principal, by their staff, by the teachers. Bringing in students into the school building in a safe manner, making sure they're doing all the safety checks, all the screeners, getting the temperatures taken, and then bring them into the building. And that's what you see here on the top. I know that Superintendent Winston had the opportunity to head over and visit over with Julius Chambers Vance High School and visit with them as the students came in, and we appreciate that. They did a great job. And then you'll see here, I had the opportunity to go to Ridge Road Middle School, where I was able to spend a little bit of time with their new principal, and Cortland Reeves, and I will tell you, it was enjoyable for me because Cortland has not seen his students, and he's been there almost a year.
Because he's new.
And so for him, it was his first day welcome students back in person. And we have some principals that we've had some transitions that have happened while principals have been out. And so it was a new day for them, a new day that they can personally get out and wave to their kids and welcome them into their buildings and their families and everything else. And the last thing I will share with you is just also a huge thank you to all of our families, all the schools that I visited. As families came up, if they didn't have the screener ready, they were quickly getting the screener taken care of, or they answering the questions. They knew to have their children ready with the windows down, take the temperature, and come inside. I will tell you that any lines that we have at schools, they're going to shorten as we get in routines, and that's going to make a clean process for us to get students in an adequate amount of time, which many of them have done even in the first couple of days. So I will leave you with that by first of all just saying, or in that with saying, thank you, thank you, thank you to all of our staff across our district in all three levels as we've brought students back. And we just really appreciate all the work that everyone's done. And thank you to all of our leaders of our buildings, because you are key and instrumental to making that happen. So thank you. Superintendent Winston, I will pass it back to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. I do also want to acknowledge, I know that we had several board members who were out and about this week as well as last week. And too many to name, because I will forget someone, but I did want to acknowledge your presence. I had the honor of visiting most of the schools on Monday that I visited alongside our board chairwoman, Dashiu. And so I wanted to thank you, enjoyed spending that time with you. And I also just wanted to clarify that for middle and high school students, we're welcoming back about 13,000 each week. That's what we welcome back this week. And so next week, we'll welcome back another 13,000 and so forth. So just wanted to share that.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, as it's been said, to the tremendous work of the teachers, the administrators, the staff, and all that they're doing. It's been tremendous. And of course, I'm on the Southwest End, and I got a chance to see the middle schools in the Southwest End, Southwest Middle, Kennedy Middle, today Kennedy. And I just have to give a shout out. They were it's tremendous. The way the plans have been put together to ensure that this hybrid model, this time in the building, is going to be effective. And the principal is very concerned about that if we're going to bring them back in person, we want to make sure instruction is tight, and that we look at how the plans are laid out for teachers who would do remote, who's doing, in person, who's doing the remote that's at home. Such a great plan. And I want to say, and I just mentioned this because the principal shared this, and I thought this was great. One of the schools that was on the list of 39 schools, and he talked about what he did to ensure teachers that I'm going to put you in the best places in the building so we know ventilation is better. And he used his mobile units because they have individual systems. And he said, and I use this side of the building and that side of the building. And because you have the ABC rotations, he was able to do that because, of course, he had less students in the building. So there's something to be said for this rotation and the way, very strategic, very well thought out. So I just have to say that so much planning went into excitement for this second day of school because the kids, for them, it's what? The first time in the building, many of them. Sixth graders, first time coming back, right? Never been in the school. What a great experience for them. And just the hard work of the faculty and the staff, even child nutrition, I saw that. Just wonderful. And I want to say, and I have to shout out to this staff, there were teachers who came to work and they're expecting and they're about to deliver, and they wanted to be there for this first day, and they are at work. I just have to give that shout out because that says a lot about our teachers and staff and how they feel about our children and the teaching and learning. So I was impressed. The social distancing, how things were laid out. As soon as I walked in, here's the hand station. You need to go to this, another one. So well done, what I saw. I just want to say thank you. Well done.
Ms. Fowler?
Yes, thank you. This is Brianna Fowler speaking. And I just wanted to say change is hard no matter what. And especially throughout this pandemic, we have seen a lot of changes. And when we returned starting February 15th, I've seen teachers doing amazing things. The teachers teaching both online and engaging their students in person is just phenomenal. I don't understand how they do it. They did not get proper training, they didn't get adequate time, but yet they adapted to the changes that came to them. And I just really wanted to give a shout out to them. Also, our juniors took the ACT today, so congratulations to you guys for taking the ACT today. And I just felt like Dr. Hayes said they were quick learners. The juniors have not been in school since last March, and they came to school today to take a big test, and they were obeying the signage. They were wearing the mask. They were not pulling it down. They were really engaged in what they had to do, like everyone had said on the board, of course. And I just want to give a shout out to them. Also, for the new grading procedure plans for our pandemic grading, how we are implementing it in the second semester, how the teachers are prioritizing teaching essential standards and having teachers implement a 10-point grading scale and a 50% being the lowest grade. Our students having a 5-day grace period and only 5 points maximum being deducted, and allowing students to meet an 80% mastery criteria if they retake a test. I just feel like we are starting to realize that we are in a circumstance that we were not wanting to be in, but we are in now. And now we are making changes for that curriculum, for the circumstances that we are in. We understand that we cannot ask our students for the same expectations that we normally would. And instead of bashing or blaming someone, we are now adapting to the situation. And I just feel like we're doing a great job. I'm loving what we're seeing. I'm hearing great feedback from students. I got DMs or people are telling me that they felt really comfortable going back to school, even just for a test, or seeing it on Instagram or social media that people feel more comfortable going back to school. And students are excited to go back to school, and it's making me happy and excited because I was talking to my friends, and I just love that we are so ahead of the game. Instead of reacting, we're being more proactive, especially with the grading and the curriculum and the testing. And I just wanted to say that, especially Dr. Hayes, you did a wonderful job with your presentation as well.
Ms. Cheek?
Okay, well, first off, the Viking spirit is alive and well, Ms. Fowler. I can feel it all the way over here, and we could maybe one day before you leave the board, we'll do the Viking cheer, because I still do know that from the time I spent as a cheerleading mom at North Meck High School. So super excited to hear your perspective. I've seen the pictures on social media. I've seen the smiling faces of children waiting at the bus stop with their mask pulled down to smile for their parents' camera. And I've gotten a lot of text and messages too from people that are just super excited. It's really telling, and Dr. Hayes, when you said, Cortland Reeves over at Ridge Road, that's the first time he's greeted students in his school. It's just astonishing. I did an interview on WBT radio yesterday morning, and I got choked up right before they called me to talk. They always call you like 3 minutes in advance, and you're kind of sitting there, and I was kind of anticipating, what are they going to ask me? And I realized the last time we had students in school, I had a student in CMS, and he's away in college now, and I don't even get to see him because they're kind of quarantined at Chapel Hill. But it was just kind of overwhelming to think that that's all transpired. So the teachers have done amazing work. I still see some angst and some nerves, but I think every day, as I experienced back in the spring last year when I had to return to work every day, things get a little bit better. So I thank you for keeping the ship steering. I thank you for the open-minded leadership style that I'm seeing, because we are having to adapt. I'm not going to use the P word, but we're having to adapt and be responsive to ever-changing conditions in every one of our schools and to unique things. And the one thing I'm going to say is, this is the mom in me coming out. If you're a student or a parent and someone in your family is sick and is taking a COVID test or is thinking about taking a COVID test because you don't feel good, keep your butt at home. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, that is the mom in me coming out, because I still am thinking that we got people that are not necessarily following that rule. And we always say that every year, keep your sick kids home. But this year, it's really more serious. And so keep your sick kids home. If you're sick and your kids are fine, still keep your kids home. If someone in your household has tested positive for COVID, stay home. If someone in your family's tested positive for COVID, you need to call your principal and let them know. So we need everybody to be adults here, even the kids, especially our high school kids. They know. So be responsible and take care of that, because we care about all of these kids and we care about all of our staff. And the best way to handle this is to be responsive. And I also want to say thank you to our staff that got out some news today about vaccine appointments, and more of that is coming. And so we're going to see more and more of that. And just, it's tough to get them scheduled sometimes. But I'm super excited to see a lot of weekend and evening shot clinics coming up so that our staff can get to them without too much problem. But stay home if you're sick. That's going to be my new mantra. Stay home if you're sick.
Yes.
Can I say one quick shout out? Funny thing, last week, I was at Cotswold Elementary, and not only do staff take temperatures and get the screener questions done, but there are a lot of dogs that hang out the window at Cotswold because they get treats when they come through the carpool line. So I thought, it's a full service operation.
Ms. Fowler, you had another comment?
This is just really quick. For the pandemic grading procedures, I know that we understand that students were going under a lot of stress, connectivity issues, language barriers, there's like food insecurities. And now we realize that, of course, and our grading policy is going to be implemented into the second semester. However, is there a way that we can go back and implement this into our first semester for our students, so then this could be implemented to their grades, so then we could make it equitable? The only reason why I bring this up is for equitable reasons. If we want to implement it into our second semester, I think that'll be equitable to bring it into our first semester, especially for our high schoolers who take a 4x4 class, meaning that they took the class first semester and it's no longer going to be affected for their second semester. That was it.
We're looking into it.
What was that?
We're looking into
We're
it.
looking into it. We're researching options.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There's a lot of complexities to that we have to figure out in order to be able to execute on it, but we are researching to make sure and see if it's a possibility for us or not, okay?
Yes, sir, Dr. Hayes, I totally understand, and I do not at all want to put any more stress on the teachers than they already feel. So, and I know. I just want the public to realize what we're also working on.
Good. Sorry, Mr. Strain.
Thanks. I guess my request would be that we have that conversation with the board. But I want a big shout out to our building leaders and staff and our operations teams, right? The building leaders and staff in our buildings are getting all sorts of shout outs, and rightly so. We couldn't have done this without our operations teams, and so thanks so much to them as well. We know we've got a couple of issues with the calendaring that you recognize, Dr. Hayes. High school, for example, the A rotation missed out today because the juniors were in taking the ACTs, so there's a day of in-person learning lost there. The rotation C, we've got midterms coming up, and so similarly missing some opportunities there. And so I would ask that as soon as we can, we bring that back to the board to look at how we go about making sure that, if possible, we can maximize the seat time and the frequency that our kids are able to get in-person instruction. I know there's obviously some limitations that we're working with, but that being said, we've also got the numbers of kids in schools in each classroom that we have known and now can see. And I'm pretty sure we could double that in most classrooms and not have an issue with regards to meeting the 6 feet of separation that is required in our middle and high schools. Similarly, on the buses, I'm not sure where we are currently in terms of transportation, but I look forward to seeing some statistics on that, the extent to which we can modify those rotation schedules and perhaps collapse one of those rotations into the other so that we can increase the frequency, as we said, as well as the seat time. And so that'd be great. I mean, really the bottom line here is that that's so critical. I've said once or twice before, every day matters, and it does. It's great that we're back in the classrooms now at all grade levels, but we do need to look for opportunities to increase that seat time, and we've got a number of opportunities to do so, and I certainly hope we can have that discussion at the next board meeting, given the experience of, at that point, 3.5 weeks in. Thank you.
I struggle with peripheral vision at this table, so am I missing anybody? Okay. Ms. Cheek touched upon vaccinations, and I just wanted to find out the latest, because I know that we have had, the superintendent and I have had some good conversations with the county on ways that we can collaborate to be more strategic and streamlined in getting staff vaccinated, student-facing staff. So I just wanted to check in on that and see if there's been any movement since that conversation.
Absolutely, and we're excited to report that there's actually been a ton of movement, especially in this last week. So we did commit to doing everything that we could to provide the greatest access possible to our employees who wanted to get the vaccine. So there are a few different examples I can even share. Just this evening, our communications department shared information with all staff about events coming up this weekend. Actually, one of them starting on Thursday, as early as Thursday of this week, through our partnership with Novant Health. One of those events is going to be out at a Novant Health site out on East Independence, and the other is going to be Saturday at McClintock Middle School. And those events are designated and targeted for CMS student-facing staff, so that's great news. So any staff who are listening, please share with your team members and your colleagues. We understand that many of those spots, even as of tonight, after releasing that information, had quickly started to fill. So that's a good thing. But with that said, we have other opportunities as well where we're helping to target our employees who might be, I don't want to say, who are in situations where they are serving our population that is the most at risk. So for example, we are creating an event for staff who serve at Metro and Charlotte-Mecklenburg Academy to take place this weekend. So we are going to be communicating specifically with those staff who are interested in coming out to get their vaccinations at that event. And just this evening, we found out about a new opportunity where we are looking forward to partnering with actually Union County Public Health Department, who are going to be hosting an event in Union County. So we have already created a targeted email campaign and reached out to our employees who reside in Union County so we can get them out there first, since it's going to be close to where they live. So those are just some of the few things that occurred this week, and we expect more opportunities to come about. We have actually also communicated directly with our staff who are working with our extension students to ask them if they wanted us to share their information with the Mecklenburg County Public Health Department for the purposes of county health department staff reaching out to them directly to help schedule and get them set up for vaccines at a location that's convenient to them. So these are just some of the efforts that the team, it's certainly not me alone. We have a team of people working on this. Huge thanks to Monica Damian, who's with us here tonight, to help coordinate these events, our communications department. Really, it is a joint effort to make sure that we can provide this access across the board to our employees as they become eligible. We have to keep in mind that we are working with the eligibility requirements that the state releases, and there continues to be somewhat of a limited supply of vaccines. But on an encouraging note, we seem to be hearing from our providers and our partners that they're getting more and more each week. So that's really a good sign, and we're happy to take advantage of that.
All right. Thank you so much. That is some encouraging news, and I can tell you guys are hustling. I'm grateful for that. If there are no more questions about this, then we will move on to our next report, which is on career and technical education. February is actually Career and Technical Education Month, and so I am going to turn to the superintendent for a report on our CTE programs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in my eagerness to share information, Ernest Winston, Superintendent. Thank you, Madam Chair. In my eagerness earlier to share information about registration, I misspoke. I talked about ACEP, BCEP registration. That actually begins this summer. What I should have said is that families can begin registering their kindergartners now. So that registration is open now, and I wanted to highlight that. As we transition to our next report, it is important to acknowledge that this month is Career and Technical Education Month, and we celebrate CTE, which is an educational pathway that directly prepares our students for high-wage, high-demand careers. And in CMS, we offer more than 20 pathways in CTE to help equip our students with those 21st century skills to enter the workforce and to begin their journey in the global economy. And so we celebrate those opportunities this month, and I'm going to hand it off to our CTE Director, Susan Gann-Carroll, who will now present an update this evening.
So it's great to see everyone. I have really enjoyed reconnecting with my fellow workers in person this evening, so I am delighted to be here with you and welcome our guests, and we're going to get, I know that you're very anxious to hear what they have to share with our wonderful partners, but I want to kind of set the stage a little bit for that. So tonight what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how we're preparing our middle school students to kind of get exposure and move on through so that they're ready for that next step after they graduate. We're going to talk a little bit about how we are achieving and moving our students forward. We're also going to touch on what we've done in remote learning. And then also, like I said, you're going to hear from a couple of our partners. Let's get started. So You will have this deck. I'm not going to read all of the words to you, but I'm going to give you some of the highlights. You all will be receiving our new revised six-fold, and I wanted to kind of touch point and walk you through our strategy. So in middle school, we are really trying to layer in a suite of courses that helps our students explore all of the different mini STEM opportunities, so that once they get to high school, they understand where they need to go, what they want to do, and what they should take next in CTE coursework. And so that's really our focus in middle school, and we'll talk a little bit in a minute about how we have been making progress with that. We've got some really exciting developments. And then we come to our high school pathways, which, as many of you know, we have been working on for now about 4.5 years, and we continue to make progress every year. We have revised our pathways. Some of them have shortened to 3 courses with the intent that that 4th course experience would be an internship and that work-based learning, which we've been making a lot of progress over in the last year. So I'm excited to share that with you as well. But our pathways, we've got some really great new inventive things that we are introducing in this coming fall. We've already started a little bit of the work this year to start to kind of get our grounding in that work. The work-based learning, of course, that is a really critical element for career and technical education. We know that our kids can learn anything in the classroom, but it doesn't make sense until you've actually applied it in the workplace. And so we have continued to work with our partners in Met County, in the region, to make sure that we are beginning to connect them with that real-world experience. And we're doing some interesting things in that not always are we looking for the student to go out, but sometimes we're bringing training programs into the school to make sure that we are really giving everyone an opportunity to experience that training. And so that's kind of an innovative way that we're helping bridge the gap that there may not always be an internship because of that age restriction that often exists. Our partnership with Mayor's Youth continues to be an absolute critical part of our students' lives, and this year we began to partner with Radius Learning through Mayor's Youth, and we began to develop virtual internships. And that virtual internship has been a game changer for us, and we are excited that the next step for that is going to be to actually embed that into our program, so that if you're a business teacher and you really feel like it would be valuable for your students to do a virtual internship, that we're building, we are not building, but we're paying someone to build the platform for us, that they would be able to opt in, be able to do a 100-hour internship as a part of that course, or just opt into it as a student. And we think that that's going to help bridge that experience gap that sometimes may make an employer a little leery that they've just had some career classes, but now they've finished an internship that not only has the work readiness part to it, but it also gets them hands-on application that has been designed by industry. And so we think that's going to be a game changer for our students, and we're really excited to be offering that next year. And then the next part is that next step ready. So I just want to give a shout out to Principal Kennedy at Philip O'Berry, because she's the one who coined this term, and I think it is so appropriate. We want to make sure our kids are next step ready. And that means that they understand, what should I do next? What CPCC class should I take? What should I take as a major? How do I make sure that what I learned, I can now make that next step so that my future, I don't have to muddle around and make some mistakes, but I'm pretty sure that this is what I need to do next. And I just want to say that it's really important for everyone to understand, and we beat this drum all the time, that career and technical education is really preparing kids for all opportunities. If you want to go to a four-year university, we can help prepare you for that. If you want to go to a two-year college, we can help prepare you for that. If you want to go right to work, we can help prepare you for that. And so I think that in this current labor market, it's really important that our parents and our students are really educated about the career field, and that they ask questions about, what do I need? They don't just assume that they need a four-year degree, so that they really get the most leverage out of those post-secondary dollars that kids will have to invest. So let's talk about what we've been doing. So in our early exposure, we are really proud to tell you that we have over 6,000 middle school students enrolled right now in, well, this year, some may have taken them first semester, in over 9,000 coding courses. And why this is important is that the city of Charlotte has named that they want to become a tech hub and the most diverse tech hub. And so we are intentionally building that pipeline for our students and making sure that all students have the opportunity to be exposed to what it means to be in a career in software development or IT. We also, I was speaking of that suite of courses, 28 middle schools offer a suite of courses which would be Project Lead the Way, Design and Modeling, Automation and Robotics, either Computer Science for Innovators and Makers, or Computer Science Discoveries, which is a state course, which we're very thankful for. And then additionally, App Creators is in also many of those. And we have intentionally pushed our dollars towards supporting to make sure that our kids are really getting exposed. And I have to give a shout out to our principals who are really taking this seriously and wanting to make sure that their students get exposed as widely as possible. And then we also have over 4,000 middle school students who are getting some essential skills training. So that soft skills piece that we hear from industry all the time, we're pushing it down into the middle school grades. And I think that that's been a really positive add because our Working Smart curriculum that we do in high school has become now embedded. And then lastly, I just want to share that we have our next year, our first trades program. So it's an introduction to carpentry that's going to happen at Whitewater Middle School. And so we hope to expand that further. So in our pathways, what's really exciting, and so I want to pause here for a minute and give a shout out to all of the people. So I don't do this work by myself. This work, it could not happen if it was just on my back. We have a team of folks at central office that are absolutely mighty, working all of the time. And we also have a team of people who are working at our school level. So our pathway development coordinators, our instructional facilitators, our career development coordinators, they make this work happen. And our teachers, I would be remiss if I did not talk more. I'm going to talk more about our teachers when it comes to about remote learning. But they are catching fire with Pathways and what that means. And that's what's helping kids connect the dots. So two things that we are introducing this year as a group, or one thing that's as a group, is digital marketing. So if you want to be relevant in the field of marketing, you must have this digital part to your portfolio. And so we have introduced customer relationship management. Now, you're not going to hear a whole lot from me about it because I might be a little dangerous, but think of it this way. You know when you open up your phone in Google and some ad pops up that you probably clicked on like 3 months ago? That's customer relationship management. So we're teaching our students how to do that, and we are the first district in the country to offer a course that is only offered in Mecklenburg County that is a Salesforce admin certification. That's not offered anywhere else in the country. We're the first ones to partner with Salesforce, which is headquartered in San Francisco. And we have heard over and over from industry how excited they are that this is coming into Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. It's not easy. And our teachers, we have our first 5 teachers who are working on their certification, and they will tell you it's not easy. But what we believe is that our students, I don't see our students through my age. I see them for what they bring to the table. And we know that they can totally achieve at a high level when it comes to anything, but for sure something related to technology. And so we're getting ready to, I think, shine a light on how innovative CMS public schools really are. So I'm going to move on because I know we want to get to our guests. This is a highlight of our internships. So within our remote environment, we were given a lot of gifts, and that is that our students were able to access internships virtually. Instead of relying on transportation and relying on where you lived, we now had partners that said, we're going to create an opportunity and we want your kids to come and participate. And so you can see that we've had some really amazing numbers with over 1,182 internships just for this last year. And this fall, we had an opportunity through the CARES Act to do a winternship, and we did that, and we served about 365 kids. So we're very, very proud of that. In the Next Step Ready, just very quickly, our next year will be our final year in our newest pathway that is in process, which is software development. And we are pipelining students through, and we hope to have around 300 students taking that final course next year. And we're working with our great partners like Road to Hire to figure out how do we get them in that next step. BSI Solutions, we're also working with them to validate skills and figure out what does that look like. So lots of exciting things. In our Career and College Promise, that also is something that we see in every school, and we're excited as it continues to grow and get traction. And our pathways will be aligned so that kids will understand what that next step is. So let me back up real quick here and talk about remote learning. So you can imagine the palpitations that happen when we went remote and we have courses that are hands-on. That does not work. But we made it work. We said to our team, what should we do? And they said, you know what if we did student kits? And we did student kits that they could come and pick up, and they could actually cook at home. And we would make sure that we wouldn't assume that everyone has a spatula in their house. We would give them a spatula, a whisk, bowls, and we would then tailor the curriculum so that students could use those things at home. And so that's what they did. And so you can see these are some of our highlighted where the larger kits were sent home and what went in those kits. And we believe that our students really it wasn't perfect and it wasn't the same as being in the classroom, but they didn't totally not have something hands-on to do. And our apparel teachers did a phenomenal, we had sewing machines going home. And for technology, you can see that we deployed almost 3,000 laptops. And let me tell you, that was not easy. We brought all the laptops in that we had. We had to clean them off. We had to put all new software on them, as well as the software that would allow students to take them home. And we checked them out to students so that they could do Adobe programming. Whatever could not work on a Chromebook, they would have a resource to them. So I'm really proud of our team, and I'm proud of our teachers for their innovative thinking and for their commitment to continue to figure out how to make school come alive through career and technical education. Very quickly, I just want to give a quick thank you to our CTE District Board. These are our partners that sit on our District Advisory Board, and they actively work with us to help advise around promotion, internships, and keep us in the know with what's happening in the community. And so I very quickly want to pass off the mic to Casey Grantham, who is the Executive Director for Road to Hire. So we have become very good friends, she and Nick Troll and I, as we have worked through how to put Road to Hire in our schools. And I don't want to steal in here for thunder, but I want to say a word of thank you to Casey and to Nick for how much they have supported our kids. It is amazing the commitment of this team from Red Venture. They will stop at nothing. They're never discouraged. They're never cross. They just say, what can we do to work through this particular barrier that may have come up or this little glitch that happened? And so I just can't say enough about their partnership. So I'm going to pass this off to Casey.
Thank you, Susan. I think I can only go down from here after that intro. But I appreciate it, and same to you and your team. Hey everyone, thank you for having us, and I'll make it quick because we have a student who is here to speak, and I'd like her to have most of the time. But I just want to say a couple things about Road to Hire. So we are an organization that is focused 100% on making sure that all young people have access to high-earning, high-growth jobs. Like that is our mission. And we know that schools and teachers and you all are doing amazing work on that front, but we also believe that employers in our community have a responsibility and the platform and resources to make sure that all young people have access to high-earning, high-growth jobs. And so what we've done is actually created a partnership with many of those top employers in Charlotte, including Bank of America, Atrium Health, Red Ventures, and others, and started a pathways program, a Road to Hire Pathways program at Charlotte's 5 major Title I high schools. And what that looks like, and what it's looked like this year is, we did a small pilot for the class of 2020, which went so well that we decided to scale up and have 200 students do, for the class of 2021, did paid summer internships, it was all virtual of course, before their senior year. So, and they were learning college and career access readiness content and curriculum. And then the students who completed that internship actually started a full year course that we're teaching at those Title I high schools. And the content there is tech fundamentals, business fundamentals, professionalism fundamentals that are all going to actually be applicable to the workplace. And then what we told students too is if you complete this course with a B and you graduate high school, we will make sure that you can graduate from college debt-free. North Carolina Public College debt-free. So we're going to have 140 students either going to a 4-year college, some will start at a 2-year college, and a few will go to paid apprenticeships, which is also a great path that we support. But we are really excited that one of those students who's going to college is here to tell you about her experience in the program. And before she does that, I just want to say too that our intent here is to be as inclusive as possible. We have students with 1.8 GPAs and students with 4.0 GPAs. This is not only for the student who is already on that path. This is for any student who raises their hand and says, I want this opportunity, I'm willing to work hard for it, and we will support that student. So I think the coolest part of this too is this doesn't stop at college. All those employers I talked about and many more are committed to internships. They have pre-committed 4 years in advance to internships every summer for these students, full-time jobs when they graduate college. Like, we are intending to stay with students 6 or 7 years from junior year in high school to that first or second critical year in that professional role. So we're just getting started, but we're in it for the long haul. CMS has been an amazing partner for us, and so I want to pass it to Nick Troll, who's our program director and does all the good stuff that Susan talked about, and he'll introduce Sarai, our student. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. How you guys doing?
Good.
It's nice to have it all. Great. Thanks for having us. My name is Nick Troll, as Casey mentioned, and just quickly we'll share, as she said, we mobilized this effort quite quickly, as I'm sure each of you have worked tirelessly in this unique time in life. And through the help of Susan, CMS leaders, and a bunch of awesome principals and CDCs, we're able to find just a handful of great students, and which are all over CMS. And throughout this summer to fall course 1 and now in spring 2, we're working with students daily just to try to build foundational relationships, support them along this journey, which is a challenging one, which is navigating that next step from high school to college, let alone doing it in a unique time in the world. And we've met some awesome students along the way, and I share this with our team. We're building the plane as we're flying and just trying to meet students where they are and help them get to that next step. And we're doing it each day with professional development and teaching skills that I wish I had when I was 17. You know, email etiquette, giving feedback, receiving feedback, you know, how to move up in your career, how to study the right way as you navigate college and next steps. And they're teaching us as much as we're teaching them, and continue to have some exposure to technology, as well as working on how do you really go through those next steps, college applications, career apps, and just working with the awesome CMS teams at 5 of the Title I high schools here in Charlotte. So I won't go much longer, but one of those students, of the ones that Casey mentioned, is Sarai Monje, who is from Garinger High School, and just hanging out with her today and throughout this year is just amazing inspiration. So I'll bring her up to share her experience because she's been a part of our program since last summer. So if you'll welcome her.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Good evening. So I'll just introduce myself really quick. My name is Sarah Monje. I am an 18-year-old female that goes to Garinger High School. And it is really my honor to be here with all of you guys. Well, I really just wanted to emphasize a little bit of what the Road to Hire is at a student's perspective. Throughout the whole course of the year, we have seen the humongous opportunity that Road to Hire has given us. As many of you know, Title I schools are really put down in a social way. We don't really have a lot of opportunities, but Road to Hire has definitely expanded our opportunities even more. Every student that comes into Road to Hire is just really seeking that opportunity to grow, to be someone in life, honestly. And it's just been my honor to be a part of Road to Hire and to come here tonight to really represent Garinger High School. So throughout the whole course of the year, I remember being mentioned that there was going to be a course on this class, like on this internship. And I remember saying, well, if it deals with coding, I don't think I'll be a part of it. But now to say that it has been one of my favorite classes. Literally the passion of these people that come into our virtual room every single day is just so overwhelming. Everyone brings such an energy, and students are so engaged into whatever topic is talked about. I am happy to say that not only because of my efforts, but because of the passion of everyone that works for Road to Hire, now I am able to go to UNC Charlotte to pursue nursing as my passion and as my career, debt-free. So first off, I just really want to say, Nick, thank you, and also all the Road to Hire team. They have been so amazing, and thank you very much for having me tonight.
And just in closing, I can't follow that at all. As Casey mentioned, we are really excited for the 140 students that have worked tirelessly through this program virtually and continue to impress us every day with exciting messages about college acceptances or apprenticeship next steps. And we're more excited to share that we just launched our second application. We've expanded to Philip O'Berry along with the other 5 schools and already have over 140 applications. So we're going to keep it going and really excited to work alongside CMS and the team that is here to support students on their dreams to high earning and high growth careers. So thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming to us.
Okay, so our next partner, who you may be familiar with, is Darren Ash from Rebuilding Opportunities in Construction. And Darren, I'm just going to turn it over to you, or Darren is coming in, so that he can kind of share the growth. This partnership has been amazing, and it has been in place for a few years now, but it has grown, and through his leadership and partnership, we're taking it from what was this to now something that's much more and is going to touch a lot more students' lives and give them opportunities. And he's breaking barriers for us around internships. And I think that's super critical, the work that he has done to get kids in internships and apprenticeships before they're 18. So I'm indebted to Darren and his leadership and what he has done at The Rock, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Susan. Turn this up here a little bit. My name is Darren Ash. I'm the director of The Rock. Thank you for having us. I have Jamaica Miller with me. She's one of our seniors, been with us almost 2 years, and she's on the pathway to be an electrician, and we'll talk about that in a second. The Rock is a construction trade school. We serve 4 high schools, 3 on the west side, West Meck, Harding, Philip O'Berry, and then we just opened a second facility in Hidden Valley, and we're serving Vance Chambers. We are 6 days a week, every day in person. We never stopped. Well, I take that back. We stopped during the last part of March and April, but we were back in May all through the summer until now. We even had our apprentices working in the construction field all summer during COVID. So I think we have a bold staff, bold instructors, a bold partnership with CMS that let us do this. We have about 70 students in our program right now. 40 are on a college pathway, which is what Jamaica is on, and then 30 what's called Rock Direct, and as the name says, it's direct to work. Let me just say something real quick, and I will let Jamaica speak. I think what is very unique about us is a few things. One, we have integrated the trades right into the middle of these schools. Jamaica is able to attend her clubs and her sports at her home school and then attend the Rock as part of her school day. That is big to attract kids into the construction industry. But one of the key symbolic things is that I think we're kind of a paradigm shift. You know, it was academics, 4-year university pathway. We stress academics, but it is only one of 3 things that we think the new world economy demands right now. The new world economy requires 3 competencies, so please listen, because I know you know this. Academics, I mean, our students have to finish their core classes at CMS. They have to pass, and we hope they move on to an associate's degree. But CMS and CPCC are key partners in that one competency. The second is a detailed skills training pathway. We want to teach our students, and employers are demanding that they know something in a very detailed manner. They have gone deep into one thing, something that people are generally scared to do. And there's a lot of things within construction that we are doing. Again, electrical, HVAC, advanced carpentry, construction management. Those are the skills that we are training. And then I said there are 3. The third is work-based learning. Work-based learning, we are, I think, the only state-registered youth apprenticeship in this state where our students are able to go to a construction site under the age of 18 and work and get paid $15 an hour and do the work of an adult. That is huge. It's a hazardous job. It's been defined as, and employers have stayed away from this. So I think you're part of a movement. You're a pioneer partner in this new work-based learning phase, because employers, while they want the skills and they want the academics, they want to know that these kids can handle conflict on a job site, that they can compartmentalize their behavior and act like an adult on a moment's notice. They can stay away from their phones. They can show up on time. And the only way to do that is to battle test them in the field. If you wait till that kid is 18, you've waited too late. And you see those that you've waited too late, they walk off that job site immediately. So I think you're part of a movement more than a program. We are expanding because 70 was all we could do for COVID. And we hope our numbers probably double next year. I'm going to let Jamaica say a few words. She's a special young lady.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Yes.
I want to first thank all of you for your patience, the board members here in front of me and also those behind the scenes. I've learned today a job, very busy jobs. So I thank all of you for your patience and sticking with us here tonight. But as Mr. Ash mentioned, the ROC program, I feel like it's an understatement. I also want to thank him as well because it quite literally has changed my life and the fact that it's just given me a future. So I want to speak to the fact of the opportunity it provides and also that work-based learning that he was just speaking to. For one, this past summer of 2020, I was 17 years old, and depending on how you got here this evening, I was working in one of the 26th floor buildings, the Alley Uplift Project. So from Monday to Friday, I was working a 40-hour work week, and that was probably one of the most interesting and dynamic experiences I've ever had. That was my first time on a construction site getting paid, for one. I was under the age of 18. And working at that extent with my peers or my colleagues, grown people, no one necessarily looks like me, but it didn't matter for the simple fact that the Rock prepares us in the sense not only for the physical work, but also in a social setting like our construction site is. Given the fact that there are less than 10% of both minorities and women in that field, being able to be a part of the program, it's really amazing. So I've learned so much over the past 2 years, and I look forward to the upcoming summer. I'll be working with a different company, and then that'll spearhead me into my workforce. So come May, when I graduate, I'm a senior now, I am 18, but come May, I'll be graduating with my level 1 certification through CPCC for an electrical assistant, and then there's a company that will allow me to go to work during the day. They'll pay for me to go to school at night, and I'm only 6 classes away from my level 2. And then that is gearing me towards my journeyman, which is a step down from my North Carolina electrical license. So it's been an amazing program, and I thank all of you for your investments and time into this. I can speak for myself and all of my peers for the fact that this has literally given us a future, given us a pathway. We weren't set up in some system of student debts, student loans, or anything like that. The type of support we get at the Rock extends through transportation, emotional support, and even supporting us with scholarships. So this partnership between CMS and CPCC is probably the greatest thing that has happened to me in my high school career, and I thank all of you.
Okay, well, I think I can drop the mic right there. Right? So Superintendent Woodston, our Board of Education, I hope that you get to go home tonight with some warmth in your heart and feeling very proud of the work that you all are supporting. And I want to personally say thank you. Many of you I've had conversations with, and you think of us often and help us connect in the community, and for that I'm very grateful and very thankful for the support and leadership that our department has received from our district and from our superintendent. So thank you. That's all I have.
Dr. Jones, if you have a question or a comment?
I just want to say thank you, thank you. I see up there February is CTE month, February is love month. I love what I hear. My thing has been students that I've questioned in high school, 12th grade, graduating, and I said, what's next? And they're just willy-nilly going, to use an old type expression, and to hear these young people and hear what you all are saying, oh, this was worth staying here to going on 10 o'clock. What a way. Thank you, thank you.
Ended on a great note.
All right. Any further comments before we adjourn?
We're just gonna float to our cars now. How about that?
I'm just going to, it was wonderful.
I think it's ditto for all of us.
Thank you for bringing, thank you for your great work and for bringing these real-life testimonials to us. And thank you for staying up so late and hanging in there for the end of a very long agenda tonight. But it's a real treat to hear from you. Congratulations.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Makes it all worth it.
Yeah. Okay, the chair will now entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Didn't that make you feel good?
Second.
Oh,
Third.
sorry, did you say wait?
Oh, boy.
Okay, so we had a motion from Ms. Marshall, a second from Ms. Byers-Bailey. All those in favor, please let it be known by raising your hands. Any opposed? We are adjourned by a vote of 8-0. Thank you.